I figured it
I don't even know what they're called.
Oh, nice.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us, Finance Committee meeting here for January 11th. The agenda for this evening consists of cable enterprises, golf enterprises, library, and the fire department. From there, we won't review minutes because I didn't send them out. What we'll do is we'll start sending them out weekly starting tonight. We'll cover correspondence and then any liaison reports. And we'll make sure we're all aligned on next meetings that are coming up. And Matt, I'll answer your question as far as all the meetings that we have scheduled up until the town meeting, so that way everybody can get on their calendars. So with that, before we jump into cable, does the committee have anything they want to discuss?
Nope.
All right, very good. So Cable Enterprises, if you could come up to the podium. And for everyone here tonight, what we'll do, I know this is a little bit different from previous budget meetings, but we'll just have you read through your mission, your achievements, your goals, and then we'll discuss line by line, pretty much, the budget items, and then the committee will have questions for you, and that'll be it for tonight. So, okay, thank you.
My name is Lisa Bezanson. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of Abington CAM, Abington Community Access and Media Incorporated. It's the private nonprofit corporation that runs a television access studio here in Abington. It's licensed by the town, and it's funded through franchise fees collected by Comcast and Verizon from their cable subscribers here in Abington. It's not funded through the tax levy. So our mission is to provide cable television service, community access to the residents of Abington. Our goal is to do it well, and we have a budget for you.
Okay.
So, oh, there it is. So salaries are based on last year's salaries with a
Stop
little
for a second.
increase.
We don't have that.
Right. So in our accounting system, it's all booked under one line item, because when we receive the invoices from Abington CAM, it's just one bill. It's not broken out by line item. So when we do the accounting, it's all one line item. So that's why you'll see here, it's 300,000. So it all gets booked back. But the detail that they create is what's being presented here on the screen.
We can get you going.
Okay, I just wanted noted that we did not see this before this meeting tonight. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
Okay, we can provide that to you.
Okay, thanks.
So we have currently 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees, making up the 170. It's a little bit more than last year, and I do have it here. Sorry.
Okay.
We were at 160 last year. Health insurance, health and dental is for 2 full-time employees, and last year it was at $14,700. We're expecting a little more this year. That's why the increase. Rent to APS actually went down. We were at, $4,500 a quarter, and now we're at half of that a quarter. So it has gone down. The interns are always an estimate. That's based on approximately what we spent last year on interns. With COVID, we had more use of them, and it's kind of unpredictable. It's depending on what's going on at the time. Enterprise fund fee, $7,400 for the fee. That's fixed. We don't control that. Insurance. Oh, I'm sorry, professional fees, $6,000 is actually what it will cost us for our tax returns. Even though we don't pay taxes, every year we need Form PC, Form 990 for the IRS, and a review. They are roughly $2,000 each, and that's the anticipated $6,000. $7,600 for insurance. It's a little bump up from last time, $7,400 last year, and that is all of the different insurances, the directors and operators insurance, liability insurance, and a few other things. Dues and subscriptions, mostly $9,000, mostly are equipment warranties and the server maintenance, repairs and maintenance, well, $2,200. That is random, unanticipated items. Studio supplies, things like snacks for the interns during meetings, cleaning supplies, whatever we need, set pieces for the studios. Office supplies would be paper, ink, things like that. Website development and maintenance, we just paid $720 for the annual website maintenance, and we're actually really not expecting any more than that. Postage, $100. Occasionally, we send out bills, other things. Other property-related services, $43,900. The reason for that, to make it an even $300,000, is because we're not expecting to spend $300,000 on the studio this year, but if we don't ask for it in the budget, then we can't spend it. So we are anticipating revenues of about $300,000. The percentage of the franchise fee has gone up with both Comcast and Verizon. As I said, we're not funded by the tax levy. We're funded through franchise fees from Comcast and Verizon subscribers. So we don't plan to spend that much, but you never know. If cameras break, we have to replace them. So we're just looking for the maximum amount that we could possibly take in. And the $25,000 Town Hall AV remodel from FY21 retained earnings. This screen, for example, is part of the remodel here, and the cameras hanging from the corners. We are mostly done with that, and anticipate spending a little bit more this fiscal year. The reason I put it in as a line item for next fiscal year is because if there's something else we want to add and we haven't asked for it in the budget, then we can't be reimbursed from it, from the FY21 retained earnings. We're not expecting to spend that, and if we don't, it remains. So $325,000.
And the fact that this is not coming from the tax levy, as you said, is largely the reason why it's not lined out here in the system.
Right, so Abington Cam is a separate entity,
Yeah.
so we contract with them.
Right.
And they send us an invoice.
Okay.
And instead of it being broken out by line item, it's just charged to a single expense line in our accounting system.
So on the information we've been provided, it's proposed for FY24, 300,000, so that should actually be 325.
300,000 is the operating budget, and 25K will come from retained earnings, which haven't been finalized yet. So it's like a capital item
Okay.
paid for from prior year savings.
So that is the FY21 retained earnings. And that has been certified by the state, hasn't it? It's my understanding it's certified once and then carries over until it's spent. It doesn't have to be certified again. FY22 retained earnings would have to be certified
That's right.
separately.
Right, but the balance carries forward, so it's likely that it will be there. We just need to go through that certification process again, but it should be there.
Do we have any retained earnings beyond that 25,000?
There's 91,400 that's in the budget for this year, used for operating expenses.
And there's a surplus in this entity as well. There's a large surplus in this entity.
So that's outside of the town-related portion
Okay,
of there from
all right, that's all.
prior to when the budget was running through the town.
The enterprise fund, right, prior to the first 9 years of
Yeah.
the corporation's history.
And what's that balance?
About $1 million. Actually,
So what accounts for the $66,000 decrease from last year's budget to this year's budget?
So the operating budget in fiscal '23 is partially funded by retained earnings. So it's over their revenues. So usually when you budget for an enterprise account, your revenues will match your expenses. In this case, there are additional expenses in '23 for some capital items, and those retained earnings push that revenue over what's usually seen.
so
So
I'm sorry.
basically, we'd expect operating revenues, the operating budget to be about 300,000. So what you're seeing is just leftover money from last year being used.
The 366 number came from anticipated Comcast and Verizon revenues of about 275. And then we had FY '21 retained earnings of 91,400. So whatever 91,400 and two something makes 366,000 is what we asked for. The revenues are anticipated and have increased because the Verizon and Comcast contracts were renewed and our percentage of franchise fees increased to 0.75%.
So essentially, you're budgeting to spend all of your revenue, and then whatever deficits you have, you take from retained earnings? Is that?
No, well, the thought there is that we're anticipating a maximum 300,000 from Comcast and Verizon. And there should be about 25,000 left over from the town hall remodel, AV remodel. So that's why we asked for the 25. If there's something else that we haven't completed by June 30th for the town hall, and we don't ask for that FY '21 line item, then we can't take the money from there.
Okay.
What would happen to
And-
it?
You just
It
retain?
remains,
It would
it
stay
all
there
remains in the enterprise fund.
in the fund.
And then what
In
happens?
retained earnings.
Right.
So like Andrew was saying, the next year it gets lumped into the
Rolled over.
certification of retained earning funds for that year. And it keeps rolling forward unless they specifically put it into a budget to use it and actually do use it, right?
Yes,
Could you use the $1 million for something?
yes. We spend the money in our checking accounts to pay for everything, and then we're reimbursed from the enterprise fund. That's where the invoices come from that Andrew said are not categorized. We submit all of our invoices and they reimburse us.
So Lisa, to kind of go to the point you guys were both asking about, I believe, if I understood you correctly, the other property-related services, the 43.9, is similarly, you're not necessarily budgeting that for very specific things to use all of that money. That gets you your operating budget up to what your expected income is, so that you have the flexibility to spend up to that amount
That's right.
in the fiscal year.
Yeah.
But you're not necessarily planning to spend it.
No, we don't plan to spend it. We've never spent, well, I shouldn't say never, I mean, depending on what was going on. They built the new studio at the high school, so they did spend more than that year. But it doesn't typically happen that we spend that much. It's just that if we don't ask for the total amount, then we definitely can't be reimbursed that much. It would be a warrant article at a town meeting to,
And that money would go into retained earnings, correct? The money that comes in from the fees from
Yes.
Comcast and Verizon, that's not in your budget. Anything that comes in over what you're budgeting.
no, it's anything that we don't spend in a fiscal year. Like this year, we didn't spend almost 15,000.
So let's just say, as a hypothetical, you're budgeting for 300,000 there. If something bizarre happened, cable, like everybody in the town got cable that didn't have cable, and that money came in at 400,000, where would that extra 100,000 go? Would
That would be the part of the retained earnings. So anything that we didn't actually spend in the fiscal year and anything that is above our requested revenues is retained earnings for that fiscal year.
And I think, okay, I was gonna say this is my last question, but it's not because I have a different one
Fine.
after. I think you were saying that the franchise fee percentage for both Comcast and Verizon went up. In the last couple years, I know several years back before people started cord cutting, the revenues were over 300,000, then it dipped down to 275, 270, I think, a couple years ago. You're expecting revenues to be around 300,000?
Actually, a little bit more if it keeps going the way it is. We've only received
I know we receive
One
checks quarterly, right?
quarterly.
And what are the, do you know what the last couple have been?
I actually have it here. So the last two, August, Comcast was 40,806, Verizon was 31,531. In November, Comcast was 39,842, and Verizon was 28,620. But Verizon, as I said, their percentage will be going up.
And why did the rent to the EPS go down?
We renegotiated the rent with the schools, so it's half of what it used to be.
Well, that's something for the school to ask them. Why didn't they ask for more?
So my other question that I alluded to, I know that when you and some of the people that came onto the board around when you came on there was a little bit of a bookkeeping mess for the organization.
A little bit.
How have you guys been doing with straightening that out and
So,
getting things back up to speed? I think the last time we had talked, you were working on previous years' back filings.
the tax returns?
Yeah, tax returns.
Oh, that.
And some other stuff. I think overall, but tax returns was definitely part of it. And I know you guys were kind of closing in on
Right.
getting things done.
We're current with all of our state, federal paperwork filing as far as I know, unless something else pops up. But we got all of our, tax returns, annual reviews, and there was a audit for 2019. We got all of those done. We're current. We're just waiting for, after May, May, the tax returns are, for the corporation are due. But, so we got all those caught up. Took a little bit, but we did. There was, there was an audit in 2019. That was the only year that's ever required an audit. The rest of them are annual review, and that one was because we collected over $300,000 in revenues that year, and that was because in 2018, we found that there were several uncashed revenue checks that didn't actually take too long, a few weeks, and we got them all back in January and February of 2019. But that also put us over the $500,000 threshold for when the state wants an audit or a annual review. So instead of having all of those recovered checks redistributed to the years that they actually should have been cashed in, and some of them we couldn't put to a year because they didn't all come identified as what quarter they came from. So we left them in that 1 year, otherwise we would have had to have the tax returns redone for every year that they came from, 2013 going forward. So the audit was done, and that's so far the only one that will ever be required unless revenues go over 500,000. Yeah. As far as I know, we're current with everything.
So what's the year end for the corporation? Is it 12/31?
The corporate year end is June 30th.
Okay, all right. And so who prepares the 990 and the,
Oh, I'm
PC.
sorry, no, the corporate year end is December 30th.
Okay, yeah.
And the fiscal year end, June 30th, I'm sorry.
right,
So we have DiBiase and Nash out of Revere. They were recommended to us, and they agreed to take us, whereas most accountants would not take us on because there were so many issues. So we're happy they agreed to it, and as I understand it, we did have another accountant that went partway and decided not to finish, and they were actually charging us the same. This accountant charges $2,000 each for the Form 990, Form PC, and the review. The prior accountant was also charging us $2,000, but they didn't do all of it. So we had a little catch-up. I think that's what Matt was talking about. Yeah.
and they're just preparing the tax returns, there's no type of audit going on, there's no audit work?
No, they do the review. There's no audit, just the 1 year required an audit.
Say that again, and that,
There's no audit because the corporation doesn't take in over 500,000. It's an annual review, which is
It's
Pretty much
almost
the
a
same
level
thing.
of analysis for nonprofits.
right, well, you could ask for an audit.
Yeah.
I
sure.
mean, if you had issues, you could say, can you come in and audit the books and records? You knew there were problems. No, that doesn't, I agree with that. But so you're saying we're all caught up with all of our tax filings?
As I understand it, the state is satisfied that we're up to date, and the IRS is also satisfied. And our annual filings with the Secretary of State are all up to date. So
Okay.
it's just a form saying that we had a meeting, annual meeting in November.
Not really our purview, the $1 million surplus, because it's not part of this. Just curiosity on my part as someone who contributed to that, because I have cable.
Yeah.
Is there a plan to use that, or it just sits out there waiting for catastrophe?
It's pretty much just waiting. There is no plan to use it. Our biggest thing was the AV remodel here at Town Hall. The next big thing would probably be if we need to replace the studio cameras. They have, as I understand it, a life of about 5 to 7 years, and they were purchased in 2017. So that would be the next big buy, although not as big as this. Yeah.
Are we getting a good interest rate on it?
I'm sorry?
Are we getting a good interest rate?
We are. We put money in, we have 5 3-year annuities now. We've done them over the last 9 months. We put $120,000 in 2 in March, and another $120,000 in 2 in August, I think, and then just another $120 that's still being processed by that annuity company. This one is at 4.85% interest. The interest rates have been going up.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, next up, we have the Golf Enterprise. You can come up to the podium, please.
Before we get to golf, I have more of a general question on enterprise funds. So we do it, the town pays for the insurance for the employees and things like that, and then we do a chargeback to the enterprise fund to recuperate that. So obviously, we have sort of been, for years, had the ongoing issue of the OPEB liability and the growing liability concerns there. Would there ever be a way to calculate what the cost of that was to the enterprise fund and then seek chargebacks for that?
When we charge back to the enterprise funds, it has to be in the prior fiscal year. So in terms of getting back those costs, it's difficult. But once we start paying into OPEB, then we can start incorporating that into the enterprise reimbursements every year.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
When you say start paying into OPEB, what does that mean? You mean start
Similar
contributing?
to, excuse me?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Similar to how we're paying pension and trying to get that fully funded, eventually I think the state will require us to make sure that OPEB is also funded in the same way that the pensions are. There's no such requirement at the moment, but long-term, that's probably where we're headed.
All right, you're up, sir.
Hi, Randy Vadabunka, golf course. Mission, provide the community with a good recreational experience at a reasonable cost. And then achievements, we provided great conditions throughout the drought season, exceeded our previous fiscal year's income, and safe quality customer service throughout our busiest season since we've been there. Goals, just to keep providing exceptional service to our members and patrons, prudent management of our expense and payroll budget, continue to improve course playing conditions, and continue to manage our capital improvements through completion. So the payroll, I have 6 or 7 part-timers who work in the pro shop, who work seasonally. They all got 75-cent increases to get in compliance with the minimum wage increases. And I also have 3, 1 full-time year-round office administrator and 2 skilled labor positions out on the golf course that I also felt should get that 75 cents just to keep their disparity, because their job's a lot harder than sitting behind the desk collecting green fees. So that was the increase on the payroll from last year to this year. And the line items, most all stayed the same. The only ones were the ones that were affected by inflation, which was my fuel, my cost of goods sold, and merchandise in the pro shop, and my groundskeeping, which is my fertilizer and pesticides, which have gone up like 50% in the last 2 years. So I had to do an increase to get in, so I'm not burning that portion of my budget through another department.
Yeah.
But I do have our revenues from,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone wanted to see those, what we're taking in and
Yeah.
what we're spending. Last year, for our fiscal year, we did 575,000. We're spending around 360, 370 on the golf course last year. And then we do have some other, the chargebacks, which put us around, I think, 460. So we're still hanging in the black.
Yeah.
we have some projects going on, clubhouse renovation, roof siding, windows, doors, which is in the middle of, actually, the windows are coming tomorrow for storage, and they're gonna, schedule that in the next couple of weeks if the weather holds out to get the windows and the siding done while we're slow time of year. So hopefully I'll hear from them for scheduling that in the next 2 weeks or so.
And all that's covered within the enterprise fund?
Yes, we
So-
put in, we did a warrant at last year's town meeting for the cost of those renovations and some equipment replacement, which I'm still waiting for. It's like
Right.
14
So-
months to,
So, I'm sorry, I thought it was covered, that your revenues are covering it, or?
correct. The
Yeah.
revenues are covering everything
Okay.
that we've done
Alright.
since
So
we.
what we approved it at town meeting.
Yeah. okay.
Yes, yes.
I
I
see.
still have to get approval even though it's
Yes,
not
yeah.
taxpayer money.
The roof is done.
The roof is done, yes, yes.
Nice.
I had a couple little things I want him to look at when he comes back, but nothing major.
And water coming in.
No water coming in, but there's a couple nails that missed the boards in there, so I want him to fix that up before, because it's up on the hill and it gets really windy and I don't want him blowing off in 2 months from now.
Yeah.
So he'll be there, I'll have him fix it up.
Any other questions?
It looks like under expenses, you had a couple of accounts that just sort of dropped out after FY '20, maintenance supplies for
Yes.
12, but that was just moved to a different,
Yeah, we tried to consolidate them because we were new to the town before the golf course was always run by a management company. So that's why we only go back to 21, because that was our first, 20 was our first actual physical budget. And we're trying to consolidate the things that are redundant on there, so we can just make it more streamlined, easier for Andrew to put them in, easier for the office administrator to find the right line item.
okay.
Anybody else?
On the personnel, you've got a couple of people that are full-time, one 40-hour, another 35-hour.
Correct.
So what do they do during the off-season?
I'm the 40-hour a week, 35. I do all my equipment repairs, servicing. I have 30 gas golf carts. Rails need to be ground and sharpened for the season. T-markers need to be painted. And we're still open. If the weather's good, we still have golfers, so Donna and I switch off back and forth to make sure we maintain the golf shop also while we don't have any other staff in.
As far as the fees, are they competitive with?
Yeah,
Are
we're-
you comfortable where the fees are now? Do you think-
We have done small increases over the last couple of years, but we seem to be competitive. We're only 9 holes, so we're a little bit cheaper than like Ritter and Rockland, who have 18 holes, but still enough to make money and not be a burden on the town. So far.
And as far as any projects in the capital plan?
I don't have any new projects for this coming year. I have a couple going on now and a couple that were carried over that I'm trying to get wrapped up, that they're pretty intensive, so I was just trying to get through those before we move on to the next things.
Okay, so there's nothing in capital?
Nothing new for this year. I have a couple, like I said, that are in the works right now from prior years.
And is there any, where do they sit in the, I'm asking Scott, where do they sit in the priority list?
And if they can fund their capital, the projects, they can do them.
Okay.
They're self-funding, so.
Right.
If they do come up and stuff, we get it done. for sure.
Well, because it sounded like based on what you were saying with the revenue expenses, it was, you made about $200,000 this past year.
Correct.
So is that enough to put into, seed money for a project get started or do something?
Yes. We've, the clubhouse renovation project for the outside was about 117. I think we had a warrant for 230 because we still have heating and air conditioning our office is like a barn, so we were gonna put a ceiling in that and some new floors and desks. And then hopefully a small addition on the front of the maintenance building to house our new equipment that we're, hopefully comes in sometime before I have to carry the warrant over.
Okay, and just last question is, you mentioned here about the handling the drought. Where does your water come from?
We have a pond on the fifth hole, that's actually one of our warrant items that we're trying to work through. We have a pond that has a small well that replenishes it, and we had put in a warrant last year to put in a second well so we can start watering fairways and not just tees and greens. So that's actually one of the things that we need to start working on.
That's a great hole.
Anything to make that water smaller on the.
Yeah. I'm trying to make it larger. We're gonna make it an island green.
Any other questions? I have a random one. I remember sledding there as a kid. Is that still a thing?
They do still sled there. Sometimes I have more people there in the winter than I do in the summer, unfortunately.
All right,
But
well, that's good to
yes, they do still sled there.
Okay.
Selling hot chocolate.
We tried that the first couple of years I was there with Charlie, and it didn't go well. The hard part is when we're closing for the day, everyone's parked up there, so now we have to leave the gate unsecured, and the people are all around the building, and makes it a little difficult, security-wise, because you got people out there drinking and sledding, and
Oh, yeah.
it's not like, when they bring their kids during the day, in the afternoon, it's fine, but they're out there till 10, 11 o'clock at night.
There are your trespassers right there.
We did put trespassing signs up, but it doesn't help, and
Okay, so
It
daytime,
is.
I'm good.
yeah, no, you're fine, like, I live in Taunton, so once I go home, I don't know who's sledding there.
Yeah.
I told them, bring your phone, because if you hit a tree, there's no one here to call 911 for you.
Okay, cool, that's good to know. Well, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And there's like a little creek at the bottom of the hill.
There, yeah, if you go too far, you could get wet.
All right, next up, we have the library. You come up to the podium, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deb Grimmett. I'm the library director. I'm accompanied this evening by the chairman of the Board of Library Trustees, Henry DiCarlo. And before we start, I know most of you, but there's a few of you I don't. Could I ask that you all introduce yourselves? Would that be okay?
You're
Just
turning
kinda
the
tell me
table on us,
who you-
huh?
Yeah,
Let me put a
nice.
name with a face, please.
Well, we can start with Marty.
Hi, I'm Marty Golightly.
You I knew.
Paul Haggerty, class of '82.
Chris Murphy.
I can't beat class.
Sarah
two.
Poole.
Daniel Eddy.
That's all.
I'm the recording secretary, Kelly Murphy.
Awesome. I know Andrew. And I know Scott, although he seems to have left. So, the library, first of all, we are not an enterprise department. We do not generate revenue. Just get that out of your minds before I proceed. The library's mission is to strengthen the community by providing resources and programs which enhance learning and cultural connections for all residents. And our mission statement was voted by the Board of Library Trustees on September 12th, and it's part of the strategic plan, which I believe was sent to all of you. Our achievements, librarians awardee, I'm sorry. We advocated for funding and added a part-time children's librarian to supplement children's room staff, which meant we've been able to successfully implement additional programs for kids and teens, including a literacy playgroup, a teen after-school club, which explores manga and comics, and added visits to the public library for all grade 2 classes, which has been a goal of ours for years. So that's super exciting. We created a new strategic plan that got a little bit, was supposed to happen a couple of years ago and got a little bit derailed by COVID. It's hard to have community planning meetings when you can't actually meet with people. So the planning process included resident and teen surveys, focus groups. Plan was accepted by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, retaining the library's eligibility for grants. We've added technology this year for patron borrowing, including Chromebooks and mobile hotspots to help residents connect to online resources from outside the library and to shrink the digital divide. And our big accomplishment, as Scott will attest, the one that has probably caused him more headaches from me than anything else, we advocated for capital funding for a new roof, which was completed. And that project focused on the future by protecting the town's investment in the library building and materials. So that's what we've accomplished of late. And
So Deb, no
do I have more?
no
Oh,
leaks.
goals.
No more buckets, no more towers.
Yeah, no more, we're done with that. We have goals. Do you want me to read them, or are you good with reading them yourselves? We're, as I said, librarians are wordy.
Yeah, we can read them if you just want to summarize
Sure.
as we read.
So in the strategic plan, we focused on 4 main areas, which are literacy and lifelong learning, which is obviously the core value for any public library, to provide support and celebrate literacy, reading, as well as art, digital, and so on. Community connections, one of the things that came out of our survey more times than I can count is the library is the heart of the town. So in trying to be the heart of the town, we're trying to support and strengthen community by fostering cohesion and cultivating opportunities for residents to come together. Access for All means that we are going out and looking by ourselves and through collaborative ventures to engage everybody to essentially use library resources. And focusing on the future means that we are looking to expand and enhance the way that we provide evolving services, to try to be proactive instead of reactive. A large part of the focus on the future includes things like what we're doing here tonight, which is seeking and obtaining municipal funding, going out and looking for grant funding, ensuring that we're state aid eligible, because without money, we don't meet any of our goals. So that's the short version. Okay. So then, personal services, the salary budget for fiscal '24 is estimated at $429,469. That includes a 2% raise for non-union staff, and it funds union staff at their current rate of pay because the library union contract expires June 30th, and as of yet has not been negotiated. I anticipate and hope that there will be a settlement on that, and that we may have an article at town meeting for funding the rest of that, but that's where we stand right now.
So that's a separate union than other?
Yeah, they have their own.
Yep.
Well,
What is the current rate? What is the rate of the current contract
The current rate of,
increase?
the current union rate for this year was 2%. It was reopened due to a raise in another contract, and the town negotiated an extra 1% for January to June of this year. And these figures are based on that, which is effectively a 3% over the year before. So whatever, that 1% has already been accounted for. And the 1% is in, as far as I can tell, if I did my math right, the 1% is available in the library budget due to a few staffing things. So I don't anticipate that we'll be asking the town for money to fund the 1% for this 6 months of '23.
And in terms of the managerial staff, are they included in, don't the managers have a union here essentially?
The library director is not part of it.
Okay.
No, I'm not. So in terms of non-union staff, there's me, the custodian is shared with the town hall, that's a non-union position, and the two library assistants that say bylaw are non-union. Everybody else in the column that says group, if it says library, that means they're a union staff member. This does not include funding for our many substitutes. Those are typically paid out of state aid we transfer state aid money to the town at the end of the fiscal year if we need to. We don't function without subs. Library's open 53 and a half hours a week from Labor Day through the middle of June. So we have to cover all of those shifts. So that's salary. And then,
Let me ask you on the salary.
Sure.
As far as when you look at the head count, Are you comfortable where you are right now?
The additional professional position, part-time position in the children's room, which is staff librarian children's, which was filled by a current staff member, has been a tremendous help, a great boon, and has enabled us to do many things. The next goal that I think the trustees and I have identified, we would like to, I forgot, the reference librarian position is also a bylaw position at 17 and a half hours a week. I would like to see the reference librarian position's hours increase, if not to full-time, then to part-time at a greater rate. I think we could use that assistance and those services, especially for adults with reference questions. We did not put that in this year's budget because we just got a position last year. So we kind of decided to let things shake out, see what happens this year. I anticipate that that's something that I may be talking about a year from now or 2 years from
Well,
now.
was that a full-time position or just part-time?
Reference,
Last year that you added to this year's budget?
that's a part-time position.
Part-time.
Part-time. We have a full-time children's librarian, we have a full-time assistant librarian for children's services who is also my de facto assistant, and we have now a part-time staff librarian in the children's room.
Okay.
So that's
All right,
children's
so
room
you're
staff.
thinking about next year possibly adding,
Hours to the reference position.
Okay, all right.
Which we try to balance things, adult services, children's services, trying to get second grade class visits to us and being able to support the number of visits we do to pre-K and kindergarten, and increasing children's programming was a huge thing. We had 592 responses to our survey, and at least 3/4 of them were people screaming for more children's programs. So that was a huge goal, and we've tried to meet that need first.
yeah, I think the outreach you do to the community is outstanding.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just to follow up on that point,
And Henry,
Deborah serves as,
can you go to a mic? so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
the recording can hear
That's a
you?
good point.
Just to follow up on that point, having the reference librarian hours increase in a future budget would free Deborah up from doing some of her reference duties, and it falls on her primarily as the director to fill into those hours when that reference librarian is not there. So that's why as trustees, we've made this a priority.
Thank you. Deborah, would you mind explaining what a reference librarian is?
Absolutely. A reference librarian is a professional librarian with a master's degree who provides information services. So if someone comes to the library and says, I need help finding how to contact the registry because I'm over 65 and I don't have a computer and I need to renew my license, reference librarian can do that. Reference librarian can help with somebody who comes in and says, I'm writing a thesis on all of Shakespeare's tragedies and I need critical works from 17 different sources. Reference librarian can help find those. Reference librarians are good at assisting people. I'm trying to think of questions we've had. The 17 is much, but we did have a question about Shakespeare last week. Good at finding resources and connecting people to those resources as they need them. I'm a bit on the warpath with the registry at the moment because they are not, in my estimation, providing adequate services to our senior citizens, and I've actually reached out to our state senator and received some help from their office for one particular patron. The digital divide is a very real thing. The digital divide is a library term for people who have computers at home and people who don't, essentially. People who have access to things, people for whom it's maybe frustrating, but you can go on your computer at home and make an appointment to renew your license. If you don't have a computer and you don't have internet access and you're 78 years old and you have no idea how to use a computer, how do you do that? Who's going to help you? So those are the things that we do. And then obviously helping teenagers, college students with school assignments, adults who are looking for ways to apply for housing or to apply for some sort of federal assistance, job seekers are huge, things like that. So that's reference librarian kind of facilitates the communication from the human who wants something to the resources, be they book or digital, that will help them.
Okay, I'm glad I asked that question.
Can I, so there's 3 assistant librarians and 5 library assistants. What's the difference between those two?
The library assistant is a part-time position. The pay scale is lesser, and they work primarily circulation. Everyone has other duties, and everybody does a little bit of everything, including me. I have scrubbed the bathroom floor on occasion if necessary. However, an assistant librarian is a full-time position, usually with a somewhat higher degree of education, and they do things like, when we get books, they have to be, there needs to be data entry. You know, books don't come already in the Old Colony Library Network catalog, they have to be entered. So library assistants do things like that, work with programming, depending, the children's assistant does programming, the adult assistant helps me with programming, outreach to patrons, one of our assistants runs our wildly popular cooking club, things like that. So that's kind of the difference. Library assistants typically, most, if not all of their hours are scheduled at the circulation desk.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice to see that the assistant librarians is like the years of experience, it's like average, like 15 years of experience, and then the library assistants are 4 years. That's comforting to know that you got people that know what they're doing, they've been in there, they've been around there, and working with someone like you is a win-win.
Thank you. As we go forward, there will be changes because obviously we are looking at retirements coming down the road, but hopefully not next year.
Well, I was gonna ask Scott that, it's like, do we have succession planning in the town?
Well, every department has encouraged to do their own succession. Except for Deb's, you're not allowed to. But, yeah, I mean, that is something that, yeah, we encourage, that, everybody does that. But it can be difficult in this environment when there's an exodus and there's no people to fill positions.
The Board of Library Commissioners offers succession planning workshops and assistance for library trustees, and I'm sure that the Abington trustees will avail themselves of that when the time is right, but the time's not right yet. Anything else about staffing?
You mentioned state aid. What percentage of your budget is comprised of state aid?
From what you see in front of you, nothing.
Okay.
State aid is unrestricted money that comes from the state, specifically designated for library services, and is under the control of the Board of Library Trustees. We do not spend state aid in the year that we get it, because that's not a sound fiscal practice. So we are at present spending the money we got last year. We save a little bit just so there's rainy day money if something really bad breaks. We use it for staffing. We use it for computers. We also use it for programming, both to pay outside performers and for things like boxes of crayons, construction paper, and all the things that we use for kids programming. We use it for museum passes and things like that. State aid varies. I believe this fiscal year, last fiscal year, we received somewhere between 29 and 31,000. That's off the top of my head, I need to look that up, but that's what we've got. And last year, we spent, I think, about 10,000 on staffing. So that's on top of the town, what the town pays for staffing.
Okay.
And that's so we can do things like be open 53 and a half hours a week, offer Saturday family story hours, we need to have, in order to be safe, we need to have 3 people in the building. And the trustees and staff there's a policy that says we can't be open without 3 people in the building. It's a 16,000 square foot building that's open to the public with no ID requirements or anything. So for safety reasons, we need 3 humans in the building.
And is there security in the building? Is there any monitoring going on in the building?
No, because that's an issue for privacy.
Okay.
There are cameras in the parking lot and there are cameras on the library entrance. And that's been helpful. In terms of, some libraries do have cameras in the building. It scares me because people interact with books and other library materials in the library, and the idea of intellectual freedom and privacy. Massachusetts state law requires the protection of people's intellectual privacy. So at present, no.
Deb, can I ask a question?
Yes?
Do you have an idea of like how many library programs you run annually?
Yes,
Wow.
I do. Give me 1 second to find the right folder.
I think it's very important for all of us to realize exactly how many
Okay.
things.
This is the right folder. This is called the ARIS, which is the Annual Report and Information Survey that we have to submit to the state, which has every statistic about everything library that you would ever want to see. So,
I should have known you had it.
you knew I was going to have it.
Marty, you definitely.
All right, so,
I like that she has it on paper.
it's right here.
Anyway,
She wasn't even Googling it.
I have digitally too, if you'd like it that way. So, the total number of live programs as opposed to digital programs.
which you do have.
We do have digital programs too, yes. So the total number of live programs held in the library last year, so this would be fiscal 2022. So allow please for the fact that the beginning of fiscal 2022 was 2021, which meant fewer programs. We offered 397 programs, total attendance was 5,616. So.
In a year, you offer way more than a year's worth of programs.
And as I said, that number's low. We did, in terms of off-site programs, because school visits are considered off-site programs, the school classes that come to us are on-site programs. When we go to a school class, it's an off-site program. We did 91 off-site programs, which was 90 school class visits and a program at the senior center. And attendance at those was 1,307. And yes, we do count the children in the classroom before we leave. And then virtual programs, we did 16 live virtual programs last year, and we had 150 people attend those. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And you mentioned the digital divide and issues with seniors. Do you do any program, you said you had one last year, do you do anything like library now, or where they can come in, you can assist them with
Yes.
the issues you described?
Yep, we have a program called Device Advice. Took the fall off from that because our reference librarian left. Our new reference librarian just started before Christmas, and he's got something scheduled next week during the day and an evening program. We also will do, anybody can make an appointment with the reference librarian at any time when he is there, and he'll sit with people. Our former reference librarian would sit with people and do things like get them going on using Overdrive on your phone for library resources. And also do things because, like the aforementioned government services that you need to have email. We help people set up Gmail accounts and things like that. So yes, those services are definitely available on demand. Not on demand in the sense of walking in and saying, hey, I need it right now. If we can, we will. But we can definitely do it if someone makes an appointment.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so,
Sorry, Deb, I wanted to
yep,
backtrack just real quick to the state aid for staffing.
mhm.
Is that the same staff, or do you bring in other people for that?
That can be paid to regular staff or the subs. We have a regular corps of subs. They are paid at the lowest library assistant rate, and they're essentially on call. They have no benefits. They have no expectation of any benefits. I send them a text message or a phone call and say, hey, can you work Thursday night from 5 to 8:30? And they say yes or no. Sometimes they can go 3 weeks without working. Sometimes they'll work 3 times in 1 week. It just depends. And that there is no money on the town side budget for that. So all of that sub work comes out of state aid. And our subs are vital. There's one working now.
If you don't have a sub, you have to close the library at that time.
Yes,
Potentially.
yes. We try really, really hard not to do that. Okay, so in terms of budget lines and Heating has moved to the amalgamated budget line, so Andrew can talk about that. Most of our lines are fairly self-explanatory. Professional and technical is the name that goes to the Old Colony Library Network, our membership fee. So that's what that is. And that should be the only thing that is in that line. The supply lines vary, office computer, tech, and custodial. They vary up and down. I try to budget them and they never work the way I want them to. I do the best I can. Usually we end up going one way or the other among those lines. The book budget is important. That has to be 15% of our total budget to be eligible for state aid. It has to be a minimum of 15% of our total budget. And books and magazines is a little bit of a dated term. That's books, magazines, audiobooks, e-books, e-audio, e-magazines, streaming video. If it's something that a patron can interact with, databases, whatever, if it's something that a library patron can use, it goes in that line. And that's the line that the state watches like a hawk to make sure that libraries are providing the best possible services for their residents.
So is that 15%?
That's $200 or $300 more than 15% of the total requested budget at this point in time.
But is that satisfactory?
Yes,
Okay.
because we supplement it with state aid and with trust funds and with gift money and things like that. So, and the Friends, for example, museum passes, some we pay for out of state aid. We don't pay for museum passes with town money. Some get paid for out of state aid, some get paid for by the Friends of the Library. And the state allows us to account for that. So the budget last year we also went over on the book line. That happens too. If there's money other places, that's where we'll go over at the end. Not over at the library budget, but within the library's expense lines. So last year, our total expenditures for patron materials were over 100,000. So I mean, it was 89 as budgeted, and then, I'm sorry, whatever was budgeted for 22. The actual 22 is right there, it was 95. And I think we spent another 10,000 out of various other places on patron materials. So yes, for a town of our size, I think that's adequate. The folks who use Overdrive would like us to buy a lot more things, but one has to be reasonable.
The library networking.
Yes.
What is professional and technical cover? Is that electronics or?
No, that's the library's membership fee or assessment to the Old Colony Library Network.
Okay.
So it's, in a sense, it provides our circulation system, library circulation system. It's called an integrated library system. So it's the catalog, it's the patron database, it's how we check things out, it's how we put books in, and the network provides a lot more than that. The network has databases and is also the hosting platform for Overdrive, which is one of our digital silos.
Okay.
Anything else?
How do you handle, as far as the technology goes, who handles your technology needs?
It's a hybrid patchwork. I'm glad you asked. A lot of our purchases of things like computers and stuff like that, we work with Wayne Norling, and Wayne will typically do the initial setup. We have somebody that we pay out of the computer maintenance line who has some specialized knowledge for a couple of library-specific software programs that provide security and also like time vending for public computers to set those up. I'm pretty good at troubleshooting the time vending. I can set that up if I need to. So it's kind of a hybrid. If we're going to buy anything, we usually consult with Wayne. Anything that we buy that is going to be used with network resources has to meet OCLN specifications, but that's usually not difficult. We currently have Chromebooks that we're circulating, and we have 5 hotspots which came through a state program with COVID money. And the state program ended on September 30th, and we've assumed hotspots. And those are popular. People like to take them out. People who don't have computers at home, we have a couple of patrons who will come on the Friday before every long weekend and take a hotspot. And one of them also takes a Chromebook. And then they can check their email all weekend. So very much a hybrid.
And what happens to the Chromebooks when someone takes out and they bring it back? from a security standpoint? They're being scanned?
Yes, we scan them when they come back. We scan them for various things and dump them. They're also, the Chromebooks are actually run through the OCLN domain, so they tend to wipe when they come back anyway.
Can I ask another question then? Can that be, you want a full-time reference librarian, could some of those technical aspects be answered by that position?
Yes, and our new reference librarian has some skills that will be able to do some things like that. That was a helpful thing. That would be some of the things that I'm currently doing, I would like to shift. Not because I don't enjoy doing them, but because I have a lot of other things I need to do.
In the repairs and maintenance, what's gonna be in that?
Building repair and maintenance. Plumbing, we just got new toilet seats. That was an exciting purchase. I was very happy about that. We have 12 in the bathroom, 12, among the bathrooms in the library. We just got 12 toilet seats. Super exciting day. Things like plumbing, electrical. We have, the building's 25 years old. We occasionally have relays that just decide they're not going to work, and then we have bank lights that won't go out. We're waiting, but there's a supply chain backup for the library's lights are controlled primarily at the circulation desk. There's a bank of 3 sets of switches. And in order to fit them into that section, they need to be the same, similar product, and they're currently supply chained out at 18 months, so eventually we'll do that. We used to have to deal with roof inspections and roof repairs, anticipating that that will not be a thing. We are waiting, again, supply chain for the replacement of our 2 very old defunct water bubblers, which were turned off at the time of COVID, with a water bottle dispensing machine. And again, in order to fit something into the space, the plumber's having a hard time getting the size that we need. Other weird things that come up, birds fly into windows, and windows break and they have to be repaired. Trying to think of some of the other odd things that have happened. Money on the fire alarm, the fire alarm system. There was a incident at Lowe's a couple weeks ago, which resulted in our alarm panel going into alarm. Not a major alarm this time, you guys didn't have to come. However, it was beeping, so we had to have the alarm company come and work on the reset for that, so we have to pay for that. What else?
Were you having HVAC issues?
Oh, yes, there's that.
Okay.
Yes, HVAC in general. Things like inspections, cleaning, we just paid for inspection certificates from the state, stuff like that. The HVAC system, like in this building, is 25 years old. One of the things, that's a good segue, the one thing we have in the capital plan for this year is a facilities inspection, essentially. I was very confident in saying we needed new carpet, and I was even more confident in saying we needed a new roof. I don't know when we're going to need a new boiler. I'm not capable of determining that. I don't know when we're going to need new air conditioning. I don't know at which point the plumbing is going to need more than new toilet seats. That's not an ability I have. So we worked with Scott and the capital planning committee to try to come up with something that would tell us these things and inform capital planning going forward for the library.
So is that going to happen?
Yes.
Actually, we're gonna be doing it pretty much for all buildings.
Okay.
We will go through, because most of them are, even the police station's 12, 13 years old now, so this building's 25. We did an envelope assessment of this building, but, no sooner will we be done with that than the AC units all went. So we're going to go through every building and look at boilers, AC units, windows, envelopes, put a list of when we think these things are gonna have to be replaced and roll that into our capital.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, Deborah, thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you very much.
All right, next up we have fire.
Need a break
Chief? Oh, we don't break. Yeah.
I put the candy up there.
I'm just kidding. They used to flat space on this building.
And it's always a tough act to follow because Deb is so professional and prepared, so if, I'm hoping I'm prepared with whatever questions you're gonna have for me as well. So a couple things prior to beginning, just to set the tone of this, I guess, if you will. This is gonna be my last budget presentation to the town because I'm retiring in May of this year. So you were talking earlier about a transition. You see half of my, well, 3/4 of my command staff is here tonight, which I invited them here to kind of learn this. Usually they watch this on cable. It's not the same thing as being here, and I think you'll understand that. You know, you're not watching this in the comfort of your home on YouTube at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, just like you folks, and I thank you again for being here. It's been a long day for everybody. We're all tired, and, you know, we're sitting here patiently waiting for it. So I'm trying to get them involved with it. I've been bringing them up to speed on the budget and, you know, payroll, all aspects like that, but this is also a large component of that. Of bringing them here for this presentation. They also sat in with the town financial director, with the town manager, and Andrew for that presentation a month or two ago. So I'm really trying to bring everybody up to speed on that. So that's the first part. The second part, prior to getting into the budget, it's really to understand how the budget is, how we come up with this budget, is to give you just a brief idea of what our goal is to maintain the 24/7 coverage for the town of Abington, which my entire budget is predicated on maintaining 6 members on duty 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's 4 up at Station 1 on Route 18. That will be 2 firefighter paramedics at Station 2. And that's a total of 6 at all times, to maintain a minimum of 2 fire engines and a tower truck, which is really the NFPA minimum, bare minimum staffing to enable hopefully a successful fire attack, fire rescue on pretty much the occupancies that we have in town. If this is Cambridge, that would not be enough, obviously. If this is a smaller town, a Plimpton or like that, we may exceed that. Right now, we're really still not there, but that gives us a fighting chance. 2 engines in a tower, staffed by 2 personnel, firefighter, paramedics each. That combination is the first engine goes to attack the fire, the second engine is your water supply, establishing water supply from a hydrant, and the tower truck, which is the ladder truck. Those 2 firefighter paramedics really enact a search and rescue, ventilation, we're trying to cut a hole in the roof to get the heat to smoke out, whatever the duties of the ladder company have to do to try to save people that may be in there. And this isn't a perfect blue sky day, if you will, assuming everybody's in quarters at the time and we don't have an ambulance at the hospital or we're not on another call. That's kind of what this entire budget is predicated on, is trying to maintain that. Now, at the same time, we're not just doing fires or fire calls. Obviously, we operate the EMS system. We have 2 advanced life support ambulances that are in service at all times, cross-staffed with the same 6 members on duty from fire. They literally go from fire trucks to the ambulance and back, depending how the call comes in. If calls come in simultaneously, at that point, we'll triage it, to be honest with you, to decide what we're gonna go to maintain the most life safety aspect first, then it'll be property conservation after that. At Station 1, we have 1 fire captain per shift and 3 firefighter paramedics. Station 2 is 2 cross-trained firefighter paramedics. Station 1 has 2 engines, a main engine, which is what the officer is on all the time, and a reserve engine behind that. We have the tower truck. We have 1 ambulance, which is cross-staffed, typically with a tower crew. And we have some other ancillary equipment like the forest fire truck, the boat, a few just odd vehicles that, you know, that's where they store them. Station 2, we have a primary engine and a primary ambulance, again, cross-staffed by those 2 members. We don't have 4 firefighters, 2 take the engine, 2 take the ambulance. It's typically 2. And there's a reserve engine and ambulance, hopefully, behind those as well. The reserves are for when an engine or an ambulance goes out for repair. I'm going to get into that in detail later on. So we have something else to immediately replace that to keep us up to speed with that apparatus. Weekdays, you know, typically Monday through Friday, in addition to those 6, that's when really the administrative staff is in, which is myself, the deputy chief, my administrative assistant, and we have a fire prevention captain that works days that, you know, we get really the business done although myself and the deputy really were available 24 hours a day. We're both, salaried, separate contract. Myself, the deputy chief, have separate contracts. We're not in any unions. We have individual contracts with the town. My administrative assistant is part of the town bylaws. All the other members are part of the fire union. So I'm just trying to set pretty much where we're at with this. And you're going to see throughout the budget, again, everything's to maintain that 6, and it's also contractual. When I get into the salaries, everything's based on what the union contract is. We'll get into overtime, the different types of overtime. There's sick overtime, there's vacation overtime, the injury overtime, there's, we have extra calls coming in, fires, storms, we'll bring them in for that. I'll explain how the overtime's broken up, because I know typically that can be confusing as well. I'm trying to talk to really 4 different audiences here tonight. Obviously, there's this committee, that is main one. I know Scott and Andrew, just as a refresher with them again, they've heard this before, but I don't know how you do it, because you're balancing all of these budgets. I'm trying to talk to the people at home that may be watching this for the first time, and they have no idea how we operate and what our costs are, as well as my command staff that I'm trying to bring them up to speed as well. So if I seem redundant or not condescending on a few things, I'm trying to bring this down to some levels that may be below you. And again, whatever questions you have, I'll go right up to that as well. Any questions on that point?
Yes, so in terms of the 6 members on staff at all times, do you have an on-call roster where if there's a major incident, you bring people in from back home?
We do, and typically it's the off-duty firefighters. We don't have strictly called firefighters.
Okay.
We did years ago. In order to do that, I would have to outfit each one and give a minimum training, which is expensive, outfit them with their fire protective gear, and in the event they become injured under Chapter 111F state injury code laws, they would have to be paid to be out of work at the minimum salary of a base firefighter. So we'd be paying somebody basically not to work. The risk benefit, the cost benefit's kind of not there.
Mm-hmm.
So we rely heavily on the off-duty firefighters to come in. They're already trained. They have everything. It's a manageable number, to be honest with you. When we have the major incidents, we're getting them in. When we're kind of stretched thin throughout the day, we'll get a couple of them to come in, so it's pretty cost effective. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I look at the fire department budget, 93% of it is personnel.
Yes, correct. So for the mission statement, again, it's in front of you. I can read it if you want. I'm glad that I did not write a major paragraph, because I saw some of my colleagues that when they had to read their mission statements, I think that next year they're going to be shorter. But really, it's succinct and it's right, to the core mission of what we do. The mission of the Abington Fire Department is to provide all persons, without exceptions, protection from fire and emergency medical care at the advanced life support level. That means most of them are paramedics. Mitigate hazards, whatever a hazard may be, and work to prevent emergencies through public education and code enforcement. I try to keep it short and simple because that's really what we do. I could expand on that for the entire rest of the evening, which I'm not going to do, but I think you get the core idea of what we're doing. The achievements, and I tried to really keep in mind who this audience is, so most of these are monetary. However, the top 2, again, I am proud, as the town should be proud. Several times we have had firefighters and groups of firefighters be recognized by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the Firefighter of the Year award for really heroic and above and beyond extremely dangerous calls that we've had before. So I really topped it out at that. Below that, mainly monetary grants that we get, and a lot of some of these grants you just apply for, like the state grant, that's the Student Awareness of Fire Education. That's when we go in and we teach students in the school, pre-K, really up to grade 12 at this point, in the schools, some of the basics of fire safety, right up to some real fairly advanced high school courses. We've been working with the school health teachers at that point in that program, as well as a lot of our senior citizens. We teach, a lot of that's fall protection and burn protection. We get that from the state, and we have a small group of firefighters go in and do that training. We also kind of supplement that with the town budget somewhat, because that's not quite enough to really reach all the classes. I can get into that because it's a line item. Most of these are FEMA grants. A lot of these are very large FEMA grants. These are really through the last almost 14 years since I've been chief, with the assistance of the entire department, because most of my members actually wrote these grants, and the credit goes to them, to really get us all together, to get almost $2 million worth of competitive grants over the last, 10 to 14 years. I think we're gonna actually breach that to over 2 million, which we could be hearing any day from, because Captain Carty actually wrote a FEMA grant to replace our entire radio infrastructure in the department for, and he just gave me that figure in today, 300 and, I apologize, Cap, I know you gave it to me, and I got it written here. For about $366,000, that's gonna bring that up to about $2.3 million we expect to get. From what we've heard is we've actually won the grant, but the feds are sitting on the money, we don't know why they're not moving with it. That's gonna, again, replace the entire radio infrastructure that we have in the department, which is a need that we have, and that's also a great ability to get done. We've got a Plan B and a Plan C to get that done as well, hopefully prior to coming to a capital request on that. I don't think we're gonna have to. A lot of these is self-explanatory. We have everything from 4 firefighter, paramedic positions that, the Safer grant that we got a couple of years ago, that hired 4 of them for a period of 3 years. That enabled us to get the second ambulance in operation to bring in more revenue, to not totally offset the cost, but really add to that. A lot of equipment, a lot of vital equipment that we needed, including vehicles, hose, air packs, all things that we really would have had to ask the taxpayers in this town for that we did not have to. So I'm very proud of that.
I had a question on it, and I might be misremembering this, but didn't we have with Rockland, where with the 911 call system, wasn't that grant funded, but then every year we were gonna be, it was gonna be less and less, and then, Holbrook, yes. So where does that stand now? Is that still partially reimbursed by the state, or we absorbed all the costs?
No, we have probably another 2 years.
Another 2 years, that may be a line item on here, but we're in, I think it was a 5-year total grant that we have. The first 3 years, it's absolutely zero cost to have the Abington Fire, Abington Police go into Holbrook, very professional. We've had nothing but good experience with that. And then the final 2 years of that, it begins to taper down. I think it's 50 and then 75% of that the town reoccurs to kind of taper back up to what we'll be paying for that. And again, that's covering Abington Fire and Police on that as well.
And then at that point, they apply for another larger scale grant.
Correct.
We may see savings again, and they've also actually allocated money to fully generate this building with a standby generator power, so it's been a great grant.
They're actually my Plan B for the radios. If that fails, then Plan C, we're gonna go for the grant again, but.
Remind me, I should remember this, but was police already with Holbrook and you joined, or were you already with Holbrook and police?
We were one of the first departments to join with Holbrook back in 2012.
That was what I thought.
And we finally got in, we were able to get the Abington Police about a year ago to go over. We've really become the model in this community, in this area of communities. Rockland Fire Police are over there, Whitman Fire and Police are over there, not full dispatch. A number of communities, even some further away communities, Canton, Sharon, Sherborne, I believe it is, which is still part of, I think, Norfolk County. I think, not sure if they get there with them. And there might be a couple other communities coming in too. They really got their act together. We've really seen, that's like our other department that we have that's part of us. It's really, we've seen that grow, so. Our goals, again, we kept it fairly simple, but it's the same: provide all services in a safe, efficient, and professional manner, maintain current trends, updates, and protocols of firefighting practices, emergency medicine, rescue technique, fire prevention, administrative, data management. Just to kind of key in on that, our job is constantly changing. We're doing things now that I never dreamed of when I started 33 years ago, and I never really dreamed of even 5 years ago. The members actually, including myself and my company, we carry ballistic gear, we carry Narcan, which we're all used to that now. 10 years ago, that was kind of odd. Electric vehicles, we're all faced with, we're gonna get them, how do you put them out? Nobody really knows that yet because they're not easy to put out. We can't use firefighting foam anymore unless it's an extreme life hazard, because then you get into PFAS. That's an issue. We're all learning that now. All my colleagues we're trying to figure out, how do you put these fires out? How do you put fires out in the home? You load it up with batteries. Brockton had a fire last week that I believe it started as a 2-alarm fire, and then later that night it was a 3-alarm fire from batteries in the building. It's just new technology we're trying to keep up with. They changed the safe fire code again. The deputy and Captain Cotty went to a state meeting on it yesterday, and we're kind of relearning things that we thought we knew, and it's progress, but there's a lot of training and upkeep that goes with this. The administrative data management, our different software that we use for tracking fire records, EMS records, budgetary stuff, we do a lot of that with the town like that. It's constantly changing for the better, but I think everybody in this room will agree that it gets a little harder to maintain new levels of software training the longer you've been in the job. But we keep up with it, if that makes sense. Finally, we're working with the community to explore all options to modernize the fire stations for the health, safety, and the needs of the Abington Fire Department. I think that actually is going to be a whole other night meeting with this committee, talking about the fire station DPW building committee. That's kind of really what this is referencing. We are taking care of the 2 buildings that we have, but they're old. And that's really a whole other meeting, I think, for you folks. I can absolutely expand on that if you want, but I think that's might be better for another night.
I would agree with that.
Yes. Good call. Closing, yeah.
Prior to getting into my budget, just a couple of department revenues that we have before I forget. So we bring in a total ambulance revenue of about $1.3 million by operating the 2 ambulances. We actually bill 3 times that, but that's the actuals that we get in. It's based on demographics, insurance, a lot of things. That's a whole class in itself, actually. But I've actually got that entire spreadsheet, if anybody wanted to see it. I got that today from our billing company. Again, these are all the breakdowns of everything that we have by the month, by the insurance carrier, whatever. This is anonymous, that you don't know who these calls are. And it breaks down, the total that the gross charges for last fiscal year was $3.6 million. The net that we brought in was really 1.4. However, we do a Medicare reimbursement, we get an additional 143, which brought us up to the 1.319. It's just based on demographics like that. This gets complicated quickly with the medical billing. We have a good company that's doing it. I think that our rates are current. I think they're fair. We keep an eye on, it's been a few years since we raised those, but I think we're fair where those are at this point, to be honest with you. So that money now comes directly into the general. We kind of split. It used to be kind of an ambulance enterprise budget where the budget was split between ambulance and general. It all goes to the general now, so our entire budget is also off of general. I think that's better, to be honest with you. I think it's safer. When I get into my capital requests, I have one, which would be for a new ambulance. I think I'm going to recommend a different way to fund that, but again, I'd be deferring to you folks, actually, how you want to do that. But some of the old models of doing that, for a number of reasons, aren't working anymore because the ambulance is not lasting as long as they used to. I'm going to get into that at the end. But keep in mind, that money that we have coming in, if we take a little bit of that off the top every year and just allocate that to ambulance replacement, that's going to decrease the overall life of the ambulances that we have and some of the issues that we're running into that because of, well, some of it's not the age, brand new ambulances out, but I'll get into that. But we're doing our best to bring in the revenues that we do. But that's not the reason we operate the ambulance. We're not doing this for profit. It's just an added benefit that, we are able to get funds back from operating our own ambulance.
And then in terms of revenue, this is just sort of a random question, but we have mutual aid agreements with other towns, correct?
Correct. Now, how that works, now, there's no charge for mutual aid. If I have a fire in Abington, and I have, Abington, Rockland, Whitman, Holbrook, Brockton, all these towns coming in, there's no charge. They're paying their personnel. If their ambulance comes in, transport our patient, they're getting that revenue. We're not going to get that revenue. However, it's vice versa. If I go to Rockland or Whitman or Holbrook for a fire, we're paying our personnel to do that. If we send our ambulance over there, we're getting that revenue. So it's kind of a wash, to be honest with you. Excellent question.
So, Chief, the gross of 3.6 million, but actual of 1.3 million.
The best way to answer this is explained to me, and I could bring in Bill Mergendahl, who's owns Pro EMS, who does our ambulance billing, who's an absolute genius with this. It's based on demographics. We could have the same exact call volume, almost the same type of patients. In Abington, this is going to be what we're going to get with our demographics. If this was Cohasset or Duxbury, that same thing, just people may have better insurance. You may get twice that. If this is Chelsea, I'm not picking on these towns, but if this is Chelsea, you may get a third of this, just based on whatever people do or they do not have insurance. You know, we're fairly, we're a working class town. That's a fairly even mix for the communities around us as well. If you go to one extreme, a Newton, a Wellesley, whatever, you're going to have a better insurance, to be honest with you. If you go to, more urban environments or like that, or depending on the population, you're probably going to get less. We're kind of right in the middle.
Is it more so transporting people that don't have insurance, or is it more we bill out to the insurance company and they only pay a percentage of?
A little bit of both. The other revenue that we bring in, and this is just from the permits, the fees, the different inspections and like that, for FY23, all of the turnovers to the town, that would total $71,000. So that's going into doing smoke detector inspections, oil burner inspections, acetylene fee permits, all the inspections you guys do. That brought in about $71,000. That goes again directly to the general to help offset the entire town budget. So that question came up. Any questions so far? Okay. So getting into the personal service, and Paul, you're correct. Most of our budget, really every fire department in this area, it's all personnel, it's all salaries. And really everything here is based, it's contractual. It's based on what their contract is, which, that affects, hourly rates, that affects just all different things in the contract, like all of the different departments in town. And these figures are status quo. They are currently out of a contract. They're still in contract negotiations. So to be honest with you, I'm assuming if something is reached prior to town meeting, all of these figures are going to change. But it'll be based on the same formula. It's, wherever the union and the town, assuming that they can come to an agreement, or wherever that goes, that could affect the bottom line on all of these numbers, because this is a snapshot as of today, but it's actually as of June 30th of the end of the fiscal year.
Sorry if you said this and I missed it. Are you currently out, or is it out at the end of the fiscal year?
We're currently out.
And it was at what, last June 30th?
July 1st.
This is a question for Andrew and Scott. Is there a contingency set up for this expense?
Well, we'll have like every year, we have the warrant article for that first year of the funding of any union agreements. So, yeah, once we have that, we'll plug that number in and it'll get in there, we'll figure it out.
So this is the basic salaries for everybody. And again, it's all contractual. The next page, unless there's questions on this, once we get into the different line items, I can explain this better.
I've got a question. So, firefighter EMT, firefighter paramedic, what's the difference?
It's the level of skill. There's currently 2 EMTs in the department. We have a senior firefighter EMT and myself. And actually, we were both EMT intermediates at one point, which was a step below a paramedic. The state had to get rid of that position, so we actually dropped our skill set. Basically, that enabled us at the time to administer IVs. We could intubate. There was a number of things. However, we could not really cardiac convert. We could not do a lot of the pharmacology, pharmaceutical, the medications, and some of the more advanced skills that they're doing now. So we dropped a little bit, basically. But everybody else in the department is a full paramedic.
And as far as staffing, are you comfortable where you are as far as the complement? Because I see you got captain EMT, you've got 5, firefighter EMT, you've got 3, and the firefighter paramedic at 17. Is that, are you comfortable with that complement?
It's an excellent question, and here's how I'm gonna, this ties into a new fire station. I'm not trying to, I'm gonna preface it with that. I'm not trying to use this to get a new fire station, but it ties directly into it. I have no more room for more people. Could we use more people? Yes. And I actually, in my annual report, I'm actually hinting or that in the future, with the continued growth in this town, and a lot of unknowns with what may be occurring at Southfield, that's been unknown for 20 years, but according to what we heard last night, it may be closer again. I don't know what they're gonna build, but even without Southfield, we're constantly building all of these developments. You see the call volumes are going up. The types of calls that we're doing are just different. Some of the calls are longer, for whatever reason. I could really see us using probably 8 more firefighters, which would add 2 more per shift, to really put 1 extra ambulance in service all the time. Is, you know, we're gonna cross-staff another engine ambulance, what we're doing, to help dilute the workload a little bit, and also that would minimize us from requesting mutual aid coming in. That's a big order, and I'm aware of that. We are, for our call volume compared to some of the towns around us, we're low on personnel. One of the major issues I have right now is literally I have nowhere to put them between the stations. We're out of locker space. To that extent, I have no more room to put people comfortably, or apparatus. That will be another, where am I gonna put another ambulance? You know, we're creative in what we do. That's one of the reasons we need a station, not just the physical needs right now that we have, but the continued growth in this town. We really have outgrown these buildings. So I think you are gonna see, do I need an immediate need right now? Would it be good? Absolutely. We're still treading water with what we have, but the more this town grows, it's really affecting this department. Just trying to keep up with the call volume that we have now.
It is comforting looking at the schedule, though, when you look at the average years of service. Because like the captain EMTs is 19, firefighter EMT is 14, and firefighter paramedic is 10. I mean, it's comforting to know that when people come out, because I know, you talk about the ambulances, like I'm from 2017 to 2021. My parents, like, we had the ambulance come out, it was always comforting to know you had somebody that really cared and knew what they were doing. So I want to thank everybody for that. But it's like when you look at this and it really does drive the point home, it's like we've got experienced people here supporting, you know, residents for having.
We actually have an excellent mix, both in terms of experience. I mean, there's one member, the other EMT, he's got 37 years. You know, he's doing great. You know, we have another member that just started this year, so we got a good mix. When I took over as chief, I believe the average age of this department was about 48 or almost 50 years old. It was an older department. You know, that increased the injury rate, the back injuries, you know, so we've drastically dropped that down. I haven't done this now, but I think the average age is probably closer to about 30, to be honest with you. You know, maybe 33, which helps. So. Right, so as I start going down these line items, I really want to educate everybody, because we've got, you know, it's a good question, why do we have all this overtime? And I want to explain in detail the different types of overtime, because at one point years ago, a large figure was given out on overtime, but they didn't explain what it's for. Again, what I said previously, everything with this budget is to maintain 6 firefighters at all times. However, if one firefighter goes out, we have to bring another firefighter in, and that's time and a half at that point, because I don't have 8 firefighters that I could drop down to 6 firefighters like some of the cities do. I don't even have room to put the extra firefighters. That's one of the issues. So it's going to cost overtime. So if a firefighter has a vacation day, we bring somebody in, there's going to be a line item for vacation. That's where that's coming from. If a firefighter is out sick or injured, we're going to bring a firefighter in under the sick IOD, or it's also personal days are in that as well. We're bringing them in for that. If a firefighter in their contract holiday time now, they can use that for time off, we can bring somebody in from that one. So the different buckets of overtime, if you will, the different reasons we have that, all to maintain shift coverage, okay? That's one type of overtime to maintain shift coverage. Another type of overtime is if we have multiple calls going on. If we have 2 or 3 calls going on, if we have a serious call going on, we had a CPR call this morning, we bring in, everybody on duty went to that call, and we also, at that point, put a call back in for off-duty members to come in to staff another piece of apparatus for another call that could come in, which we actually had. This goes on constantly. This is just how we operate. It's actually efficient, to be honest with you. And I know people are wondering overtime. If we had extra, if I had 12 people on shift all day and we just, okay, the first 2 go and then the next 2, that's a lot of overhead you'd be carrying. That's a lot of benefit packages. These guys would love to hear this, but really that's not cost effective. So when we're bringing them in at time and a half, it actually can be cost effective. We're doing it 1 hour per hour. There's no 2 or 4 hour minimum. Some departments do that. We have hour for hour. It's actually pretty efficient, to be honest with you. From what we're hearing in some of the other towns, it works. If we have major storms, major fires, a large event, which could be, a JAWS call, we've got a bad car accident, a lot of times we're going to bring in extra help because we actually need the help at the scene. Or I have nobody left back at the stations, so I got to send somebody back to me in an engine or an ambulance. So there's that type of overtime. The third type of overtime is really for training. And there's a couple of types of overtime, and I'll get into these as we hit the line items, but in general, we do a lot of trainings on duty with the shift, but depending how busy the shift is and depending the type of training, there's some trainings you cannot do on duty. Because if we have people out on the ice doing ice training or boat training or certainly live fire training, we can't really do that in town anyway. You can't do that with the on-duty crew. If we were Brockton and I had the 6 stations and I'm just, all right, Engine 5's out of service all day, the other engine companies in the city of Brockton can just cover that, the duties for that while Engine 5's training. I don't have that luxury because we don't have that large number of personnel. So usually we're either bringing somebody in to relieve that on-duty crew to train, or they're going to do that off-duty to get to training so that they're not interrupted by calls, which really wears away at the training. It deteriorates the training on that. So there's some required training, some EMS trainings, there's some fire trainings that we have that feel are required. Either to get a grant, we have to have proof that we all had driver training before we got the grant for the forest fire truck. We're doing some training now on our thermal imaging cameras to get everybody up to the same level of training because we're going for a thermal imaging camera grant fairly soon. And just some training that we just have to do to maintain our skills. So, does that make sense to everybody so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first line item, overtime, the proposed FY24 of 344,403. To break that down, how I'm getting that figure, this is covering part of that SAFE program, the pre-K up to the high school. That covers some of that. And I've got a whole formula on my worksheets how I get to this. Fire alarm system maintenance. Even though the fire alarm system is our last, in my department, last remaining enterprise account, the fees that come in from private businesses mainly that own a fire alarm box in front of their building, I think it's a $100 fee. That goes into a revolving account that pays for the maintenance of those. We also supplement that because it's kind of not enough, to be honest with you. This is some hours for our EMS coordinator to go out and do mainly training. Emergency callback for storms like that, that's really the bulk of this. And the formula for that, just so you understand where this is coming from, it's 25 members, union members. It's an average of 192 hours per member per year. There's a formula I use to get to that, and it's fairly accurate. Multiply that by the average department hourly overtime rate, and that gives me a total dollar figure of $273,336. That's for, again, the emergency callback. We have multiple calls, we have fires, we have storms. A lot of times during the blizzards, I will double the shift. We'll actually add staff during blizzards or major storms because it's difficult for them to get in. If we know we're getting a foot of snow tonight, I'm probably going to bring in some members because they're not really going to be able to get here in time. So we're going to pre-stage them in the stations. They're all over the place. Don't even ask. But that way, what I'm doing really is I'm putting an additional engine at both stations in service. sometimes an additional forest fire truck as well, because that little vehicle goes well. And we don't have to cross-staff the ambulances. At that point, we're dedicating everybody to the apparatus. Because we tend to be busy during storms, but mainly is the off-duty members just can't come in. By the time, think about it, 3 o'clock in the morning, okay, come into work immediately, you gotta shovel off your car, get out of your driveway, see if the roads are plowed. That's just not safe. So I will pre-stage them into the stations. That will be under that line item as well. We've got some specialized teams in Plymouth County, technical rescue team, dive team, some critical incident stress teams. There's a DMAT team, which is kind of like a federal emergency medical team. I have one member on that. Those activations, whether those members go to those calls or they're on duty and they're going, so now I got to backfill, that's all coming out of this line item. And again, I have some formulas for that to kind of cover it. There's some contractual union things that are in here, some department mechanic hours. We have a stipended position for a department mechanic who really, the two of them really coordinate with the town mechanic or some of the larger repair shops in the state, especially if it's a warranty issue. The hours that they would do if they're coming in off duty would come out of this 5130 overtime budget. That's how I'm getting the 344,403. It's broken down into all these sub-line items as well. Moving on, next one, holidays. Again, that's a contractual, for the holidays that they work, they get time that they can use for time off. That's a fairly simple formula, and that's where I get that dollar figure from, based on each person in their rate, as well as, the hours of the holidays that would be covered on that. That's how we get to that formula. The font on these budgets is small. So. The temporary upgrade differential, it's a small item, but basically what this is, if you have a firefighter working for a captain, like today we had a senior firefighter working out of grade for a captain, he gets like a little bump. Basically, it's whatever that captain rate would be for that day. It's not a huge amount, but we have to account for that. That's where that's coming from. Or, yeah, that's the main reason for that. The specialist stipends, we have a lot of contracted stipended positions in the department that I'm actually in favor of. I think this really helps, because what this does is it kind of specializes certain firefighters to do different roles. Like we have a radio coordinator, we have an EMS coordinator, we have some department mechanics. Years ago, it would just be who wants to do this, and that's not, you kind of want people that know what they're doing. There's more familiarity with that. There's some union contract stipends that all of the members get as well. There's a list of those, so there's a number of all these different stipends that they get. This is all contractual, and that's where that dollar figure comes from. And again, you have to remember there's 25 members in the local. That's how these numbers get up there. If at any point you have questions, please let me know.
You mentioned the fees don't cover, on the inspections, don't cover the true cost, that you have to, supplement that. Why not just raise the fees?
Some fees have a minimum maximum. We don't run into that as much. That's more like the smoke detector, carbon monoxide. There's a state law, there's a maximum we can do on that. Most of the other fees that we do, they're usually $25 or $50 fees. It's if you have an oil burner replacement, you don't usually see that, but whoever you hire, if you're hiring Elvin Hollis, say, we're gonna get, a form in the mail with a check from Elvin Hollis. It's gonna have the $25 or the $50 fee, depending on if it's an oil burner, oil tank, whatever. It's usually $25 per unit on that. I hope I'm right with these numbers. You are? Okay. It's been a while since I've done. And, that enacts the paperwork to, at that point, give us a record that now we have to go out to inspect that to make sure that that was installed properly, through the state fire codes with that. I don't want to scare people away from not wanting to have the inspectional services done. If we go too high on this, people are going to start doing things unpermitted, or they may try. I think the fees that we have are reasonable. You know, they're also paying taxes to have the inspector go out. You know, they're not paying for the inspection, they're paying for the small fee, which a lot of that's more administrative costs with doing that. I think I'd be hesitant to kind of raise those. I think we're fairly comparable to a lot of the departments in the area that have the same fee structure. I'm sure that there's some that are higher, there may be some that don't charge at all, I'm not sure. But I don't want to scare people away from not letting us come in to do that inspection, because ultimately it's for their safety. If that answers your question.
All right, yes, thank you.
Okay. You know, the list of fees, basically, a lot of times, you're talking oil burner replacement, oil tank replacement or removal, propane tank. If you have a propane tank, either above ground or below ground, you know, the fees on that. The smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, those are all required by the state law if you go to sell your home. And that fee is actually set by the state. I think that's $50 per single family. It goes up to $100, I think, for a duplex, and maximum of $500 for like a large apartment building. Pretty much how that goes. We could rattle off the whole, you know, if somebody comes in and do a 21E search, which is a search of our records for, usually it's for an oil tank on the property before they buy it, there's a small fee for that. It's an administrative cost fee. Vacation, again, this figure is based on pretty much what the members have for their accrued vacation time, and assuming they're going to use that, it's to cover that position when they're out. The bereavement, this is an estimate, it's a contractual item as well. If there's a death in the family of a member, they get certain days off. You know, there's a list of how many days they could get depending on who may have passed away. This is an estimate. Obviously, we can't plan on this, but it's a fairly good estimate. Sometimes we overspend this, sometimes we underspend it, but it's fairly accurate. It's a good place saver. Sick leave incentive, again, it's a contractual item that they have. Other, this is another one that would require some explanation on what this is. A lot of this is some of the training of, contractually, each member gets 36 hours of, we call it professional improvement time, which is, it's for training. So and it has to be approved by myself as chief. If they want to go take a fire academy class, they can either get paid to go physically to the academy or take it online if they're off duty, or if they're on duty, and this happens a lot because we can't always schedule when the academy is going to have these classes. If that class happens to coincide when their shift is going, they can then get coverage for that class. So each member gets 36 hours of that, and some of that can also carry over. So that's really what that other line is about, the $64,000. In-service training, again, this is just a break. I'm sorry.
On that, it has changed significantly over the last few years, down then up. Do you know what the...
Main reason on that, I believe, is just the hourly overtime rate. If the rates go up, that affects the hourly overtime rate, which affects everything. That's really the change you're seeing on that.
It looks like 21 and 22 too. Is that COVID related? There probably was less training going on.
Yes, although they still did some online training, a lot of it shifted to online training. We also had some of the newer members at the same time go up in grade from step 1, step 2 to step 3. You know, there's some, as well as some of the senior members also had some longevity things that went up as well. When we change the hourly overtime rate, that changes the entire budget. And that can account, you know, because there was really no other change in really how we've been doing this. But
Went up
that
4
would be-
times in '23. From 15 to 61. Is that the number we're looking at? The
So,
other?
again, what we have for FY 20, 21, and 22 are actuals. I'm not sure what we, Andrew, do you know what we budgeted?
Well, I'm not,
Yeah, one of that was a
That's
union
right,
contract, too. They actually increased that training as well. That used to be, I think, 24 hours, it went up to 36. That could have happened during that time frame as well.
Yeah, Chris, I think we budget more than what the actuals were on that line. And like you said, they were down during COVID.
Some of-
I don't think the budgeted amount has gone up 4 times, but I don't
Some of this-
remember what the budgeted amount was last year.
Sorry, I think some of this is an accounting thing as well. This is also, I think you're realizing the change when it was an ambulance enterprise account going into now the entire general budget, because some of these were offset from the ambulance budget. We used to actually run 2 concurrent budgets, some with the ambulance, some with this, and I think that's, this was one of the line items that, some of this was funded from the ambulance side as well. I believe that may be it. There may be a couple more of these as we go. Again, the in-service training, that's kind of the same things I said before, a lot of the fire EMS training, but we also get into some of the technical rescue, the dive training. I have to have some line items to provide when they go for not just activations, but for the training for those county teams as well. And finally, in the salary portion, the other benefits, this can get confusing as well, but it's actually salary. The first part is a contractual education component. That's $33,000 for some of the educational reimbursements that they get. But the rest of these really are clothing items, which you think would really be an expense, but they're not, because it's under personal services, and that's the bulk of this. This is replacing, if you get a torn or damaged or contaminated fire coat, fire pants, boots, helmets, the masks, some rescue equipment, and like that. That's a lot of what this line item is. Even though it's a physical object, it's under the salaries. This is also the clothing allowance, which is contractual. That's mainly what this whole line is. Per NFPA requirements, we have to make sure that no gear is over 10 years old, and they're actually trying to decrease that lifespan because of PFAS. I'm not quite sure where this is going to go in the future. Firefighting gear is loaded with PFAS, as it's new from the manufacturer. It's part of the Nomex and some of the other fire protective components of that. This is coming. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm sure you guys are aware of this as well. So we may see that as well. So, ironically, just as the PFAS wears out of your gear, they want you to replace it. I'm not always agreeing with some of the recommendations, but.
Chief, before we move off of the salary portion, I do have a question, if I could. So it looks like there's about 1.3 million in overtime, if I'm adding that up.
If you add it up, and again, but it's all those different types. It's
Right.
all overtime,
Right.
but it's for different uses. Correct.
So my question, hopefully I can articulate it well enough, considering it's 9 o'clock tonight.
Yep.
But if you were to get 2 more firefighters on staff, would you see, or would you expect that 1.3 to decrease in overtime costs?
Depends how you can do it. So here's how this question can go. First of all, again, I'd have to put them somewhere.
Right. Assuming we get the new fire station.
Or whatever. So a lot of the way the cities operate, you don't get as much overtime in cities. So let's say the city of Brockton. I'm making up numbers. None of these, if anybody's watching, this is an example. You can call it the city of whatever. Let's say that they have 18 members on duty at all times. That's their minimum staffing is 18. They actually budget up to and anticipate hiring up to, say, 23 members per shift. When the first few people are out for whatever reason, they just drop. So now, just in anticipation, they're probably never running at that full level. They drop down, but they maintain that minimum number. That's one way you can do it. Smaller towns, it's harder to do that because in addition to that, even though you may realize a saving in overtime, you've still got the benefit package that goes with that, which is expensive. The healthcare cost, you still have the training components, the fire gear, all of that stuff adds up. And then you have to take a real good close look at it. Is it worth it or not?
Well, it also, in my scenario, would negate itself if you decided to make the minimum 8 instead of 6.
If it was a minimum of 8, there would be no cost savings.
Right.
Because we'd be maintaining those 8,
Right.
which is really what we need.
And actually, the overtime would probably increase.
Yeah, it would probably increase.
Okay, thanks.
To maintain those.
If we were to do it simply to
If
save
you only
them.
increased staff by 2.
Right.
To maintain an 8-person shift, the overtime would likely increase as well.
We had this discussion years ago, when this, a very similar argument came up. If you simply just can't palate the term overtime, and you want to get rid of overtime, then you hire more and you drop, but you may actually be spending more on the overall department because of the employee benefits.
Right.
And your net gain is 0 per shift, but you get rid of overtime, and it may, you know, that's a reality, that's out there, some people just didn't like the overtime.
Yeah.
But it's really not a cost-effective way to do that. If we're looking to increase, you know, each shift by 2 members, you're actually talking 8 members, you need not 2. You know, each shift would have 2 more members. To put 1 extra piece of apparatus in service with still only 2 firefighter paramedics on it. A lot of the area towns are now running 3 on the engines. We're one of the only ones that still are not doing that. Weymouth runs 4 with no ambulance. Where, you know, you go 1 mile up the street, the same engine showing up to the same type fire, they got twice the manpower on that 1 piece of apparatus than we have here, plus we're cross-staffing an ambulance. We are about as efficient as you can get, almost to a fault. It's the reality, it is what it is, but, so, that's one way you could do that. But really, the goal would be, I think, if we were to increase staff, it's because I want to increase the minimum staffing per shift. That's not going to give you, in that scenario, that's not going to give you a cost savings with the overtime. It's going to increase it.
Right. Okay, thank you.
But that's a critical question, so I'm hoping I answered that for you.
Yeah, you did.
Can I-
Okay.
Daniel, just the way you phrased it, you said 1.3 million in overtime?
Yeah.
How do you, it's 344,000.
So it's overtime.
All that
holidays,
together.
Vacation.
All this stuff, so-
I took the salaries and I subtracted it by the
Right.
total.
Right, but that's not overtime. Those are benefits that earn, vacation and sick. I mean, I just don't think it's appropriate to categorize
Well, I
the
think-
difference as overtime.
It is overtime.
It is
Because
overtime.
whoever's coming into work for somebody who's taking vacation time
Yeah.
is going to get overtime.
It's not taking away from the person taking vacation, but that spot has to be covered by somebody, and that
Yeah.
is overtime. So it all is
He
overtime.
calls it vacation, but it's vacation overtime, because it's the backfill amount.
This is
Right,
the
it's
back
not,
top.
this is not
It's not the
paying the
vacation
person who
benefit
is
amount,
on
that's the
vacation.
backfill amount.
This is
So then
paying
why aren't we
coverage
calling
for
this
the
holiday
person.
overtime, vacation overtime? Because this, to me, presenting it this way, and I appreciate you clarifying, because I didn't pick up on that, completely missed that. So we've got $1.3 million in overtime, but if you look at this, it just looks like, oh yeah, well, we're paying $251,000 in over. Like, to me, it's misrepresented that.
Well, if you only look at it visually, but, you know, Chief did talk through each one of these as overtime. through
It
this.
really is shift coverage. It's just to maintain that 6-member coverage for the entire thing.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, contractually, you know, these are, you know, bereavement's overtime. Because if a member is out on their shift, because, you know, God forbid they had a death in the family, somebody has to come in to work that shift, and they're getting overtime for doing it. So,
So question, I think Paul's question to go to Andrew is, can we put an additional tag on those lines?
Yeah, we can add that.
Because I think having it separated out actually really helps us.
Absolutely. does.
To
Yeah.
see a better breakdown of, instead of just one lump sum of overtime, we have you provide us a much better understanding of what that overtime is for and what's being covered and things like that. I think it's really good information. But to Paul's point, if someone in town is just looking at the budget online, they're not going to necessarily understand, and they'll look at vacation time, like, why are we paying $250,000 in vacation time?
Yeah.
But if it's tagged vacation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here and I know I'm having a high school class of 82 and I missed it. But it's like, you know, yeah, if
I
somebody were
wouldn't
to see.
blame the 1982 high school teachers for that, Paul.
the other thing to keep in mind with this department, I think the police is another one, a little bit with the DPW perhaps, I don't want to speak for them, but we're almost like 3 departments in one. We're 24 hours a day, as opposed to like, you know, the library is closed at night. So, or if, you know, so they don't have to maintain that at night, or the schools. We're covering 24 hours a day. It's almost like we're 3 40-hour week departments together. It adds up, just to maintain that coverage. As well as, you know, some departments, if somebody's out sick, or even some of our own positions, somebody's sick, you don't have to fill them. We're critical, we need to maintain these positions. If I just say tomorrow, you know what, I'm not gonna use overtime anymore, okay, well, when somebody's out on vacation or sick or injured, I may have 2 guys working covering the entire town. We don't want that. So these are good questions to have, and, but these are, the discussions we've had before.
I think when I joined the board, you were still just pushing back up from 5-person shifts to 6-person.
4, we had down to 4.
It was 5 when
Yeah.
I joined, pushing up to 6. And it wasn't safe
Yeah.
for your guys.
The injuries were through the roof.
We're glad that the ambulance revenues have helped us to push the staffing up to where it is, because it's much safer than it was
Mhm.
then. But
You get to a point where, when you've got fewer people doing all the shifts, you get into a fatigue, then you get into injuries, and then you get more, and this is when I took over what we had. You had a number of people out. When I took over as fire chief, we had 13 members able to work every shift. And we were busy. So you get into fatigue. We actually had to drop the 4-man shifts temporarily, giving up a lot, just to get us back up, to kind of catch our breath for a short time. And at that point, there was a hiring freeze on town. We broke through that, we just took off. We never looked back. But it actually increases the injuries. It increases everything else, and you kind of get into a point of no return, which we never want to go back to that again. So I know you remember that. You were here as well. We've come a long way. Any questions? That's pretty much the whole salary part. Any questions on that? Right, the expenses, again, like Deborah Grimmett said, the fire department as well as the other town departments, we're what was that word? Amalgamated? I'm not a librarian.
Centralized.
We centralize, the electricity, the heating, that's gas for heat, the fuel cost, as well as the telephone, the telephone and the postage, the postage, all into a town thing. So they're out, but I still did provide what my estimates were on that. And a lot of this is based on a guess, knowing what the electricity costs are going up, the fuel costs, the gasoline and diesel. When I put the budget together, diesel was almost $6 a gallon. I don't know if we're going to return to those days. So those are out of the budget. The figures that I did provide was tried to be as accurate as I could. There's certainly an increase as to what we had had.
What was intermunicipal? Looks like that was a,
that's the Holbrook dispatch.
oh, that's that, okay.
That's the Holbrook dispatch.
Okay.
When the police joined in, we got a nice deal there where we don't have to pay for fire for, as the chief was saying, I think it was 3 years we can have to pay for, and then it starts going back up and going back up.
Okay.
So,
And just as a quick history on this, way back around 2011, myself and the police chief at the time, we were constantly leaving the station. We had no dispatch. A fire alarm would come in. We'd have to send somebody back there. It was a critical failure on our part. We had to try to take care of. So, we looked at a number of different options, and the figures back in 2011, per each department, we came up with about $250,000 to hire a small staff to be able to cover dispatch for the police, for the fire. So back in 2011, you were looking at about $500,000 at those rates. So the rates that we're paying now for both departments at 24-hour coverage or everything, when everything's back up to where it's going to be, you might be near the $300,000 range, but that's not even close to where we were over 12 years ago, the estimates on that. And this has worked well. And that's not just having 1 or 2 people there. There's actually a whole crew over there where if a major incident's in Abington, they kind of congregate and they help. There's a team that will both answer the phones, radios, and all that. Otherwise, they're all kind of on their own, and they bring their own people back in too. We don't have to deal with healthcare costs. We don't have to deal with any personnel issues like that. That's all done over there. This is, when I broke this down a couple years ago, it was basically the hourly cost of one of our lifeguards to have 24-hour coverage, 365, with complete dispatch over there. I think this is the best deal we've ever done. So. Most of these are self-explanatory. Just get my sheet in case there's questions.
What's the other property-related services? It looks like it was bumping along about 3,000 or 4,000, and then the budget last year went to 26.
Again, some of this was from the ambulance enterprise account. I think there was a trade-off. And it also depends on different years. We've spent more than we have. We've spent Somebody's down. This is just kind of a catch-all. This is, we fund a lot of things out of this.
Andrew, can I ask that some of these actual numbers, we have what was budgeted for that year too? That might be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I can incorporate those.
And the actual is always a year out from when I'm actually putting the budget together. They're a little behind. You know, some of the things, you know, this is, you know, we go through a lot of drinking water, not firefighting water at the stations for rehab like that. There's a few periodicals that come in, you know, EMS, fire training things, pre-employment physicals, some rescue equipment that we've done. Just a bunch of odd things that we fund out of this. Or if we overexpend some of the other repair budgets, we'll start drawing them out of this one as well. Building repair and maintenance, again, we got 2 older stations. We've actually done well with, you know, we've replaced both boilers, both utility air compressors a number of years ago. A lot of the equipment in the stations we've replaced, the generators, but now we're getting into the maintenance phases of these. I just had to replace the batteries on the new emergency generators. Nothing's cheap. The overhead doors at both stations are old and worn, and we're trying not to replace those doors at Station 2 is a massive cost. They have to be custom made, actually. So we're trying to see what happens with the fire station before we invest heavily into doing some of these. So these things start adding up. We're constantly, the big yellow hoses that come down that connect directly to the exhaust on the trucks, that's the Plymouth system, the exhaust system. That's an extremely expensive system that's probably 25 years old at this point. I mean, I'd be looking at, and we haven't really gone for a grant on this because it works because we periodically replace it as it breaks. That entire system, to replace it, you're probably in the millions. We're trying to hold off on this if we don't have to, but to maintain it, they're expensive. Anytime Plymouth event shows up at the building, I actually hate seeing them come up because it's an expensive repair. Luckily, we really haven't had too many boiler repairs since we replaced the boilers. And I don't think we've lost heat this year yet, which is good. Some mechanical failures at Station 2, but the equipment repair and maintenance, again, at the beginning of this, you saw a lot of the equipment that we got in the grants, but some of these are coming up in age. Our jaws, you know, I had to buy some hose, specialty hose this year. Even though you get big ticket items paid for by a grant, you still have to maintain them. They start breaking, they're not really covered under warranty on some things. Well, the warranty is only for a year. A lot of these started like 2013 and they've continued. And we still have to buy equipment as it breaks. We're going through some thermal cameras now, a little bit piecemeal. We're gonna try for a grant to replace all of them, but in the meantime, they're expensive. The radios, again, we've got a grant for that, but we're actually ordering older radios on eBay because you can't get the new ones. They change the radios all the time. And as a safety and a training component, we want all the radios the same. Because if you're in a situation, you know, zero visibility like that, what radio do I have today? Everybody's got the same radio. So in order to keep the same radios we have and to replace all of them, I have some very talented people here that find them, and we pay for it that way. It's actually cheaper that way, but this is where some of these equipment repairs and costs come in. That's actually a radio expense, but. Billing services, that's Pro EMS, that's the ambulance billing service that we use. We've had excellent luck with them since day one. The telephones have gone up because we have a lot more devices that need an air card. Our cardiac monitors each have a little air card as we're communicating with. Each apparatus now has a small tablet computer that we got from a grant, but we have to maintain the connectivity. Each apparatus, I think, is it an air card? I don't know what it is. It's got, it talks. Built in or whatever, but we have to maintain those. So that's one of the big areas that the telephone went up on that. It's all these little devices. Radios, that's a small line item, but again, replacing some radios. We still have radio repairs, even for our main radios, the mobile radios. We're able to do a lot in-house, but sometimes we still have to send those out. so I have a line item specifically for that. Alarms is a small one, that's kind of just general fire alarm. Maintenance that we do, that's a small place saver. Office supplies, that's fairly self-explanatory. Supplies, that's more janitorial supplies. Computer maintenance, again, thank God for Wayne, but we still have to replace some of the hardware and some of the licensing on that.
All right, Chief, supplies is blank in FY '23 and '24 budgets.
Yeah, it looks like it got deleted. We could add that back in.
And it's not in the current operating budget. So
Oh, wait, no,
Did
yeah.
it get moved into
Yeah,
something else?
let me just double check, the 541.
5425. One of Wayne's work.
You know, I think that's a place saver. Some of this was when we changed out, we now include the EMS supplies in vehicle supplies. We used to have $55,000 for like the ambulance supplies. Sumo Open put that back in towards, under the vehicle supply one, I believe, a couple years ago. That's why that jumped up a couple years ago.
Okay.
Some of these are just, it's kind of the accounting terms that they use it with. Again, the fuel budget now is part of the entire town. That's kind of a gamble. We may actually make out on that. I'm not sure if the amount that I had originally budgeted from that, after looking at the fuel costs going up, I didn't know if I was gonna be able to make it or not. So now that's kind of in the town, but we'll see where that goes. We're kind of watching that. We're gonna pay for it one way or the other, but.
Welcome, gas prices have gone down.
Paid $2.89 today.
Dues and fees, these are more professional memberships, NFPA, Fire Chiefs Association, the Fire Prevention Association that, two of my members are in, that's mainly what that is. That's basically it, unless you have any questions on these. I know we covered a lot of ground here tonight.
Can I ask a question? It's not really for your chief, I'm sorry. When are we gonna talk about the fire station? Do we have a night schedule set aside specifically?
Not yet. I don't think we picked a name.
Not yet.
We can get together this week or next to figure it out.
That's later on the agenda.
As long as it's not.
You will be here. but it won't be-
Oh, yeah, I'll stand a room over.
And that'll be with the committee.
With the DPW
Correct.
and with the committee.
So I do have one capital expense request as well, which is for a new ambulance. And I want to talk a little bit about the ambulances. I filled the Board of Selectmen in last night on this, but I want to get a little bit more detail on this tonight, and I am keeping an eye on the time. So we own 3 ambulances, 2 primary and 1 reserve. And just to give you an idea of the dates of these, our newest primary is 2019 Ford F-550 ambulance. The second one after that, which is also a primary, is a 2014, and then our spare is a 2008. Each one of those at one point was the primary ambulance, so these are tired ambulances. We get a new ambulance and one goes down a notch, and then hopefully one can go to retirement, but that doesn't really happen as a spare. So our newest ambulance, A2, which is 2019, back in October, it blew the engine. The engine's gone on this thing. It's covered under warranty. However, we can't get the parts. It's been out of service since October. The parts, unless you heard anything today, we have not. We're hoping they were gonna come in this week. And all of the parts are in except for a component, I believe, with the exhaust, the environmental emissions control system, which is killing us. So once those parts get in, we can finally get that ambulance back, because since then, since October, we've been running our 2014 ambulance as the front line, 2008 is our second front line. It's just as busy as the front line, to be honest with you, and it's tired. It really shouldn't be running this way. A couple of times since October, either one of those went out for a repair, for an issue. So For almost a week, we had a Whitman ambulance we were borrowing out of Station 2. So if you saw Whitman 248, we had it for the week until they needed it back. And then when it went out again, I had a Norwell ambulance. I had a Norwell A7, which is their spare. Their spares are newer than our second primary that we're running. It's an issue. There's a few reasons for this. One was traditionally how Abington always paid for it. We'd buy an ambulance, and it would be like a 5-year lease payment. When that payment was up, we'd go for another one. So we're really making one payment. It's about $87,000 a year we were doing in 5-year lease payments. The cost of an ambulance back there was roughly $350,000. A new ambulance I'm asking for, and I'm embarrassed by it, but it's what they're going for. We're talking $450,000, probably $480,000. The area towns are budgeting $500,000. And it's going to be at least 2 years before we get it. Supply chain issue is just, it's broken, and it's over our control, but, so I am asking for, Scott, I forget it was the final figure, if it was 450, 480, I asked you for,
I
but,
think I bumped it up.
okay, realistically, it's 480, okay.
475 is what it was.
At this
CMR.
April town meeting, realistically, you're not gonna have to pay anything probably for 24 months by the time we get it. We don't typically pay for anything until we receive the ambulance. However, when we appropriate it, we can actually at that point sign the contract to get the thing going. We're being told by everybody, they're probably 2 years out and the costs are going up. So even that dollar figure may not be enough to cover the entire thing 2 years from now. I never thought I'd see an ambulance cost that much money or have this delay. This is new. In the meantime, there is a strong possibility that another community in Plymouth County, they're getting a new ambulance probably in April or May of this year, and they're trading in their older one, which is a 2018. To them, that's old. And we have to change our formula too, but they're trading that back to the same vendor. So we have a chance, I'm hoping, to acquire that ambulance for about $20,000 to $25,000. That is an absolute no-brainer. The ambulance is, from what we've seen, is in great shape. It's a department that's not as busy as ours, so I don't think you're gonna have as much wear and tear on it. They didn't have Route 18 and 123 that did a number of them on our ambulances, to be honest with you. So, you know, I've been keeping the town manager appraised of this, and I think we're in agreement. If it looks good, I think we're gonna try to acquire that if we can, is a stopgap measure to probably at that point replace the 2008. So we're trying to get up there. I still need the new one, but that's 2 years out, but I'm gonna try to get a used one, which we don't typically do, but we're pretty much in a tight situation. Because if, the alternative is we drop down to one ambulance, and now you're really gonna cut into the ambulance revenue. We don't wanna do that either. And I'm having a harder time borrowing ambulances from my colleagues because they're all running into the same issues. We're not alone in this. We're actually ahead of some of my area departments with major apparatus, engines and aerials, because an aerial is 36 months out now. We're in good shape with Tower 1. This week it's out of service, getting some repairs, but I expect to get 20 years out of that vehicle, I'm hoping. So we should be okay with that, and I'm not asking for an engine this year either. We're actually having better luck with some of our older apparatus because they don't have a lot of the modern emission systems that are getting very expensive and they're finicky. They're putting the newer stuff out. I don't know if you're going to get the years out of even the newer stuff that we used to traditionally get because we're making them more complicated. I really wish that emergency services could be exempt from some of this emission requirements because it's killing us. I can't control it, but that's my 2 cents on that. So that's where we're at with the ambulance. It's the only capital request I have is for an ambulance. It's a big one. I'm embarrassed by the cost. This is not a Cadillac ambulance. This is kind of what we've had, but it's what they're going for.
So the basic bottom line in front of it, even if we approved it, if we had some like magic pen and we wrote you a $500,000 check tonight, we would still wait 24 months for an ambulance to be delivered.
We wouldn't actually write that check for 24 months.
I got it. You know what I mean?
To get it legally.
Well, the nice part about it is if we borrow, if we decide that that's the route we want to go and authorize to borrow for it, we'll have some stuff coming off probably by the time we have to make the first payment. But we're also looking, I mean, there's some opportunities that may be showing up over at Plymouth County with the covered Grant Act money
How much retrofitting would that be?
for the ambulance, for the big one.
Probably not much, if at all. Why don't we just buy used ambulance all the time? That comes with a risk, to be honest with you. And even with dealer, and they're saying, okay, you know, you're getting a used vehicle, you know. honestly, the used vehicle appears to be better than what we have as our Premi now, but that's not without risk, that's, I think it's worth it, to be honest with
We
you.
put our fingers in the hole in the dam with that one until we appropriate the new one.
Well, till we take
Delivery.
possession, delivery.
Right, sorry. Sorry, that was just my simple brain way of contemplating.
And a lot of this is really, we're a busy department, these ambulances are going nonstop. I'm not blaming Route 18 and 123, but they didn't help. Like, anybody that drives on that, you know what I'm talking about, it's just, it didn't help. They're getting more complicated, again, with the computer systems, A4, how many times have we changed the main computer on A4? I didn't, $7,000 at a whack, it's, I'm old fashioned, I want buttons that you need, that you can see without glasses. Now they're all coming with touch screens and like that. I don't know why we're doing this, because they break, and when that whole touch screen goes, that's the whole main computer for that ambulance. We tried to dumb down Engine 4 in the tower truck to build it without touch screens like that, which it doesn't have. Can you imagine being up in the bucket of the tower truck in February trying to manipulate a touch screen? They literally had that. They're made down in Florida. No, we've got firefighting gloves. It's 10 degrees out. It's wet. I want buttons. This is why I'm retiring. But and my crew has been incredible keeping all of these going. Trying to keep these, the downtime at a minimum, as well as Marcus at the highway and. The vendors, I swear when they see you call, they don't even want to answer the phone anymore. Captain Driscoll does a good job. He's one of our assistant mechanics, coordinating the repairs on these, because it's frustrating. It is what it is, we're all going through it, but beyond that, and again, the fire station committee, that will be another night, that'll be interesting. I think Firefighter Hamadi's actually the chairman of that committee as well, so he made an excellent presentation, I think, last night to the board on that. And he will fill you in where we're at. And we're trying to shrink that down as well, as best we can. So that's a whole nother night.
And for those newer to the committee, he gave us an excellent presentation last year and an excellent tour as well.
Unless you have any more questions?
So that's going in the warrant, right, for the new ambulance?
Yep.
Okay.
What's the deadline for that?
The warrant?
Yeah.
February 13th, I think we'll close it. I can always open it. Well, the selectmen can always open it if we had something like that came up prior to town meeting, we would open and close it, but that's right now. The idea of that date is to give the planning board the month of March to hold hearings for any articles that they have to hold hearings on.
Actually, we're exploring doing this last year with ARPA money. We're looking to try to get the ambulance, it would have been a year sooner and funded that way, but for a number of reasons, it appears it just wasn't going to cover that.
No, it wasn't last year. There may be more of an opportunity now. There's some new guidelines coming out, some new funds, so if we can do that, we will. I think either way, we want to authorize the borrowing so we can order it, and hopefully we don't have to borrow. Maybe we can come up with some combination of the opera funds. Maybe we'll find grant money. We'll have a little bit of time to do that, but we obviously have no choice. We have to do this.
And you get a couple of years before this really hits, but, at some point, I would recommend that you look at maybe a different funding mechanism for this. Maybe if you just take, 120 off the top of the ambulance revenues per year, just allocate it directly to an ambulance payment, and you can kind of get this down to maybe a 3-year cycle. So the maximum, even then, you may have a maximum, the old Spear ambulance, the most it would be 9 years old, if every 3 years you're replacing one. That's something I think we're going to have to look at. We really didn't have that opportunity before because we had a lot of salaries and everything else was funded out of that. Now that we've changed it, if we want to keep bringing in, the money, the revenues from the ambulance, you need the ambulance to do that. And for all of these things that we're seeing, the changes in the cost of the ambulance, the type of ambulance, the call volume, I think we may want to look at changing we may have to get a little bit more aggressive in how we order these, unfortunately. But it would reduce the overall age of the ambulance and hopefully prevent these issues from coming up again. So.
And I know we were talking last year with the police department about were we doing the right plan for cruisers and having that be a capital item, or should it be?
We have that discussion.
Should it be something that's more budgeted? This to me seems like a very similar discussion that we need
Well, we're gonna have that discussion with the school committee pretty soon too on computers. On computers, yeah.
It doesn't help the cost of these keep going up through the roof. I can't believe the percentage cost increase on these, but, so.
Any
All
other
right.
questions?
Yeah, do we have any analysis of the, you talk about the revenue it's bringing in. Is there analysis of what it costs to have the ambulance?
We do, actually. Part of that,
I figured you did.
is,
See, like Deb, you've got a paper right.
we do as part of the, getting in that $148,000, $143,000 for Medicaid, we do a cost report on that. My secretaries, I can forward this to you or whatever. And it kind of breaks down, what is the cost of being able to, the issue with that is we're cross-staffed, and that's kind of, it skews it. We use kind of 25-75 is the percentage, I think, of how we're doing that, but it's somewhat skewed, to be honest with you, because we're cross-staffing. If we were Fall River or some of the towns that they strictly just have the ambulance, like, they can tell you exactly what it costs just for that ambulance. When we're cross-staffing everything, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, no,
to
it's
get
just
that-
an estimate, anything is just an estimate.
Yep.
We
We do this annually, though. We do this as part of getting that reimbursement from the state.
Yeah, okay, good.
All right.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much,
Chief.
folks. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time doing this as well. This is a busy time of year for you. I know.
Nathan, sure is.
And Chief, thank you. I've been sitting on here with you for many of these. Sad to me that it's your last one, but congratulations to you.
Well, I appreciate it. I still remember the year me and my wife were sitting here, the night of our anniversary, watching, I don't know why we were here. I wasn't chief then, but just,
Date night?
yeah, isn't that sad?
Some
Come
people
along
go to
with
the theater.
Thank you guys for sitting through this.
Chief Mel, is going to cringe right now that I'm getting up here, but Deputy Glenn from the Abington Fire Department, I'm in my 27th year. He just announced that obviously that he's going to be retiring in May. I just want to let you know, I'm the only one out of this group that's here right now that was here when he got promoted to chief in 2010. He saw us through the darkest of times financially. He led with pride, integrity, and he really based everything on efficiency and the most safety possible. We've benefited as a department from his efforts as well as the taxpayers in town. It just should be said, and I know he's too humble to say it. I want to say it, and I know that members of the department feel the same way, that we're all, as taxpayers as well as department members, we're so much better for his efforts. He's a tough act to follow. You're going to get no one else like him in the future. So those of you that have worked with him, you know it. He's all about integrity, and that's what's led us through the toughest times. So I just want to make sure we got that out there for the taxpayers and for you folks. So thank you for your.
Thank you.
I'll suspend it in the morning for that.
He doesn't scare me.
No.
All right, everyone. Next on our list here is to review minutes. I didn't send them out because I want to make sure I give you guys a full week, so you'll get them probably tomorrow morning, not tonight. There is no correspondence. Are there any liaison reports?
We're all looking at Paul.
And then, Andrew, what do we have for next week departments?
Next week, we have IT, Council on Aging, Planning, and the Police Department.
So another similar night to tonight. We'll get the agenda out tomorrow and posted.
Get it to Tony too, please. Tony
Oh,
on that email, when you put the agenda out.
Okay.
Tony Moquin.
yeah.
And
Should be on it.
I don't think she got the last one, and it ended up not on the, town calendar.
Really? Okay.
So just to double check, make sure she was on there.
Okay.
Weird, okay.
And then if we could, Andrew, do you happen to have the rest of the calendar available?
Yeah.
And just kind of give everybody a heads up on what dates we're planning.
So we have the school department on the 25th. We also need to schedule DPW, which they dropped.
Do we have South Shore Boat Tech scheduled for the 25th as well?
Okay.
Do we? Have you talked to them?
I have not
All right.
heard anything.
I
from
just
them.
saw they were penciled in on mine, so I'll reach out to them.
So currently, we only have the 18th and the 25th
Correct.
scheduled? Okay.
It's scheduled in February yet.
Not yet, no. Everybody hear that? So the 18th and the 25th, we'll have a meeting. After that, we don't have anything scheduled at the moment, but I imagine that we will.
Well, again, we have to schedule DPW.
Yeah.
So if you want to, they offered to do a Saturday if you folks wanted to go down and see the DPW. If not, we could bring them in on February 1st or 8th, up to you. And we would probably bring the building committee in along with them.
For the fire station?
Yeah. Because it's the fire station DPW building
Oh.
committee.
So, yeah, why don't we try to do that for the 1st of February? Any issues with those dates?
I'm in New York on the 18th. I will hopefully make it back,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Anybody else? And actually, can we try the 8th for that?
February 8th?
Yeah, the 1st, I'm having a procedure, I probably won't be able to make. I don't want to miss that.
No, no problem.
Is there any other departments that we aren't scheduled?
Social Votech, DPW, the school committee, or the school.
February 1st.
You've got my department, I think, probably.
Yeah,
which,
no,
you know,
I'm just
financial
trying to
budgets, I think
plan
that was-
further ahead.
Well, I think-
Thinking what else we,
The question will probably be,
capital plan.
yeah, I think we'll probably certainly be ready if we want to do it, probably not on the 8th, but maybe, and I don't know, you can't do it, we could do it on the 15th. We could do the capital plan if we want to.
Okay.
And we should be dialed in a little bit better with some of our numbers and may be able to make some decisions on whether we want to stop bringing anybody through for clarification, or if there was some stuff that we missed that we wanted to talk about again, somewhere around there.
So for the committee, plan the next Wednesday, the next 5 Wednesdays, we'll figure out something to do on this.
Yeah, well, I didn't push any, we
It's
didn't,
this time of year.
Yeah.
we didn't pencil anything on the
That takes us-
first
Lot
yet,
better than
so.
expected.
Takes us right up to just before February school vacation,
Yeah.
which we usually have.
Yeah, we won't plan
Yeah,
anything.
don't get it.
Yeah.
What was that?
Don't get it for very school vacation.
Yeah, we try to avoid that week.
And then right now, February 1st is still open,
Okay,
so.
yeah, I appreciate that.
We could probably not meet that week.
Okay, little break, I like that.
Yeah, a little break.
Cool, very good. Well, Andrew, Scott, and I will hammer out those details and get the agenda, maybe even just a tentative, who do we have scheduled for those dates out to you guys. Like I said, agenda will come out tomorrow for next week, and as soon as Andrew gets me the budget information for those departments, I'll send it out to you guys. Any other questions for me?
Well, one of the attachments was this basic consolidated budget. And I just,
I got that for you.
yeah, well, when I'm looking at it, I just feel like, some of these discussions, it's information, which I think is great for the residents and the taxpayers. But like, I feel like when it comes to debt service, health insurance, retirement, we kind of buried in with these other, and it's like, it's 26% of the budget. And yet we put in the treasurers, we put in the town managers, like, shouldn't we have like a night where it's like, when we talk about debt service, we talk about retirement, we talk about health insurance, because it was like, I feel like, well, yeah, it's health insurance is in X budget, but we don't have any context to it. Like where we're currently at, because that's changing and where we're going. It's like, just those 3 items, that's 26% of our budget. I feel like we're kind of just passing over, because like we'll have spent more time on a $200,000 budget than we will, which is a fraction of the budget, and you get 26% of the budget, and we don't share that with the community.
Actually, I thought we did a presentation on debt service last year.
We did.
Where it was
Yeah.
going, it was
I
pretty,
think the last-
actually Sonia did a really good
The
one
last
last year.
2 or
so-
3
Yeah, it was-
years, we've had
Yeah.
it. But
We had one on OPEB too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I mean, we're happy to bring that back and do that again.
Yeah,
I mean, it
okay,
makes it
this-
hard-
this is-
But that would probably be, if you wanted to do that, because we'd want to talk to Lindsay, see where she's at with it. We could probably,
Maybe do that with the town hall budget, like the night that we do the town hall.
I'll ask her if she'll be ready to do it when I do mine. And if not, then we'll fit it in either, you know, like the 15th or something like that. We'll get it in there though, but I'll talk to Lindsay and see if she's ready. I'll show her what Sonia had put together last year too,
Okay.
because that was, I thought it was pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, no, it's on you did last year was very good, especially around the
I
OPEB.
agree.
Yep.
Hope I'll make Andrew do it.
I'm excited for him to do it. He'll do well. Anything else, committee?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Boom.
I think it was seconded by anyone?
Right here.
All right, motions to adjourn, it's seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Took a while to get
Scott.
seconded.
Can you ask her to check her spam?
I wanted to
She's
laugh.
on there.